Just ahead, Senator Marco Rubio on illegal immigration, events in Israel, and the downed jetliner in the Ukraine. In our second hour, political observers from the left and right consider the relationship between presidents and the press. And in hour 3, an American Muslim speaks out against Christian persecution. Backed by the resources of Newsmax.com, this is Newsmax TV, and America's Forum starts right now. With Francesca Page and John Bogman, J.D. Hayworth welcoming you to the opening hour of America's Forum for this Thursday.
Good to be with everybody. No time to dilly-dally. Let's get started right away with the Newsmax Now update. And today, the scrutiny over the death penalty could rise to a new level. This after a lethal injection took much longer than anyone expected. Death penalty opponents and the murderer's defense attorney say this is another botch execution. Here's one witness describing what she saw.
Once he was sedated, he just laid there and took several gasps. I counted probably more than 600 gasps during the nearly 2 hours that it took for him to die.
This all taking place in Arizona. The condemned man you see right here, Joseph Woods, was injected with a somewhat untested combination of 2 drugs. The governor, Jan Brewer, says she's directing the Department of Corrections to conduct a full review of what took place, but she says Woods' execution showed justice was in fact carried out. Also, family members of the murder victim spoke to the Associated Press. Richard Brown, the brother-in-law of Debbie Dietz, who was 29 when she was killed by Joseph Wood back in 1989, said that why didn't they give him a bullet? This man conducted a horrifying murder, and you guys are worrying about the drugs. Why didn't they give him Drano? You can understand that gentleman's concerns there. Many of you also remember that an Oklahoma inmate was reportedly writhing in pain after he was injected with a new 3-drug cocktail.
And 7 days after Dow Malaysia Airlines flight, 40 coffins bearing some of the victims were driven to the Netherlands to a military barracks, where forensics experts begin the task of identifying the remains. According to authorities, some bodies could be identified quickly and returned to their loved ones, but some families may have to wait weeks for a positive identification.
Meanwhile, if you're waiting for a U.S. passport or visa, get ready to wait and wait and wait. The State Department's global database for issuing travel documents has crashed. This could potentially cause major delays for millions of people around the world. A U.S. official familiar with the situation said some 50,000 applicants were hit in one country alone. And the FAA has now lifted its ban on U.S. airlines flying into and out of Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, Israel. Regulators decided to lift the restrictions after reviewing new safety measures the Israeli government is now taking to lessen the chances of a passenger plane being shot down. They first put the ban into place Tuesday after a rocket struck about a mile away from the airport in Tel Aviv. And as the number of immigrant children crossing into the United States illegally continues to cause alarm, competing crisis contingency plans are emerging out of both the House and the Senate. House Republicans say they won't approve any money unless there are clear policy changes that can help solve the problem. Specifically, they're referring to an anti-human trafficking law from 2008 that prevents the immediate deportation of anyone from countries other than Mexico or Canada. But many Democratic senators say the law needs to remain in place, and they want money to house the illegal immigrants until legal and perhaps even refugee status can be determined. Meantime, in a new Pew Research poll, it just came out, and it shows that more than 80% of the children that have crossed into the border from Central America in the past several months are teenagers ages 13 to 17.
Joining us now to go more in depth on this is Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, we welcome you to America's Forum.
Thank you for having me on.
Now, Senator, you've said our nation's immigration laws need to be overhauled. You took some heat over that Gang of 8 bill in the Senate. Reflecting back on that and looking at the plan now for the border, was the Gang of 8 bill in retrospect a mistake?
Well, I think the effort wasn't. I think the mistake was the one I kept pointing to throughout that process, and that is that it didn't go far enough on the security elements. And I warned about that repeatedly, and every time I did, I was accused of trying to get out of the effort or undermine the effort. And those who followed it recall me saying on a number of occasions, this is not going to pass in the House if we don't do more on the enforcement elements. Because while I do think Americans recognize the need to address this issue, they're not prepared certainly members of Congress, the majority, are not prepared to address this issue until first the illegal immigration problem is dealt with. And that's why that bill went nowhere, and that's why the House never took it up, or any other effort for that matter. And I think after what's happened here over the last few weeks, with the situation going on with the unaccompanied minors crossing our border, that's more true today than it was even then. And people are just not prepared to address the other parts of immigration until they believe that illegal immigration is under control.
And of course, over in the Senate, Harry Reid said close to $4 billion, what the president needs, that's what should be spent. Meantime, the House, on this emergency spending for the immediate crisis, John Boehner and others in the House GOP leadership saying we'll go to about $1.5 billion. What's your take on the House response?
Well, first of all, let me just comment on the Senate and what Harry Reid is proposing. What they want to do is basically write a check for Barack Obama to spend on dealing with those who are already here and those who are coming. And I certainly don't think anyone believes that we shouldn't treat them the way Americans always treat people, in the most humanitarian way possible while they're here. But what we really need to also do is improve our security mechanisms and repeal the laws that are creating this problem, particularly the law that passed back in 2008. And if you don't do that, then you're going to have this problem ongoing, and you're going to have this problem all over again. I recall not so long ago the president traveled to El Paso, Texas, and stood at the border and claimed that it was secure and mocked those who said that it wasn't. And what we've now seen is clear evidence that it isn't, and it has actually set back efforts to address the fact that, for example, our legal immigration system doesn't work well. Well, we can't even begin to have a debate about that because you're not going to have the votes to address it until first the issue of illegal immigration is brought under control. So in my opinion, any effort to address this has to begin with enforcement improvements, and I think this is an opportunity to do that, and that's what I hope the measure we do will accomplish. The House proposal, while I haven't reviewed it all in detail, I understand does call for the establishment of metrics and a plan to achieve operational control of the border, and I certainly think that's better than simply writing over a blank check.
Senator Rubio, let's move to other topics. The Affordable Care Act. After seeing the disagreements between the two circuit courts of appeal, do you think this is going to end up in the Supreme Court? And what is your take on what may transpire there?
Well, I don't know I'm certain that it will wind up eventually going through the entire process of being reviewed all the way through the Supreme Court. I don't know what courts will decide next with regards to this. It's become a real confusing and conflicting and contradictory process that it's following in terms of the court system, and I think it's illustrative of what a mess this law has become and how badly drafted it was, how poorly constructed it is, why the idea in and of itself will never work. And I think this is evidence of that as you're seeing how it's playing out, and it's just creating a tremendous uncertainty and disruption in our economy and in the lives of our people.
Let's move now overseas. Regarding what's happening in the Ukraine, are you satisfied with President Obama's response to Russian President Putin's actions in the aftermath of the downing of that Malaysian jetliner?
Well, I'm not, because I certainly should have been more forceful in the initial stages and called it for what it is. Now, since then, I think the White House has become more aggressive about its point. And what I think would be helpful now is to declassify as much of the evidence as possible, to show it to the world so the world can see how Russia has a direct role to play in the murder of almost 300 innocent people that were on that Malaysian airliner, that the Russians capacitated it by providing these weapons to separatists. This is their Frankenstein monster that they have built, and they should be held accountable for it. And to make this evidence clear to the world, like President Kennedy did during the missile crisis, or how President Bush did when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. I mean, time and again, American presidents have come before the world and the American people and showed them the evidence of the crimes and the activities of other nations around the world to rally support. And that's what needs to happen here. I mean, if we hope to get the Europeans and others on board with additional sanctions against Russia's defense and energy sector, we're going to have to show the world exactly what's happened here. And only America has the capability of doing that. And so I hope that's what the president will be doing here.
Now, you said a direct hand by Russia. Some other reports characterizing our intelligence assessments as not providing a direct link to Russia. You serve on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Are you satisfied there is a direct link to Russia in the downing of this plane?
I have extremely high confidence that that is the case, and that's why I'm asking them to declassify as much information as possible so the world can see it. I'll tell you this, the Ukrainians could not have done it. The Ukrainian government could not have conducted this. I can tell you that it is well known now that the separatist movement was in possession of anti-aircraft weapons, and that this aircraft was shot down in an area of Ukraine that was in the possession of, or under the control of these Ukrainian separatists. And these are not weapons that they took from Ukraine, the Ukrainian military. These are weapons that were provided to them by the Russians. I believe that can be proven. I believe there's evidence that can prove how this attack was conducted, and I think that should be declassified and showed to the world.
Senator, we move from that downing of the Malaysian jetliner to its after effects in Israel. What is going on there? Our FAA has restricted flights by American airliners to Israel. Was that a good idea?
It was not, and for a couple of reasons. First, we should obviously always be cautious about protecting Americans who are traveling abroad and so forth. But the issue here is, first of all, Israel does a number of things very well, and one of them is protect its airspace, and certainly its airspace when it comes to international ports of entry like their airport. And as you've seen today, Mayor Bloomberg of New York arrived there, and others that will arrive there, and other airliners from all over the world continue to arrive there. And so I think they should have been very cautious about pursuing this, primarily for two reasons. One, because it's actually paralyzing to Israel's economy to see this happen. And the second thing is, it actually has now made that airport an even more intriguing target. You've now told Hamas, boy, this is where we should focus our fire, because look at what the Americans have done as a result of what we've done. And so already today we see sirens going off, because we've just turned what was already an important target into an even more attractive one for them to look for. So I think it was an overreaction on their part. They should have been more cautious about how they did it, and I do not agree with that decision.
Well, we've had that there. Meantime, ISIS in Iraq, the persecution of Christians. We've got 2 minutes remaining to visit with you, Senator. What can you tell us about what is transpiring with this modern caliphate arising across the borders of Syria and Iraq?
Yeah, it's not surprising. This is a hateful group who hates anyone who's not exactly like them. Their goal is to establish a caliphate where they not only drive out Christians, but either force to convert or kill Shias as well. So their goal is to establish in Iraq, Syria, and potentially in areas of Lebanon and Jordan and maybe as far as Saudi Arabia, a caliphate that they control, that is an Islamic kingdom, and from there they will use it to conduct terrorist attacks against the U.S. and the West to drive us out of the Middle East. That's their goal. So it should not be surprising at all that they did what they did in Mosul, and I think they'll do that everywhere that they get possession of.
Well, let's bring this back home, literally into our homes, and talk about families. You recently gave a speech on family values, saying that the nation's economic troubles can be traced to the breakdown of the American family and the erosion of fundamental values. In the minute that remains, give us more of what you had to say on that subject.
There's a very clear success sequence. You get an education, you get a job, you get married, and you have your children within wedlock. That doesn't mean that people that don't have one of those or those elements can't succeed, but usually they'll be the first ones to tell you how difficult it is. And so in America, you see all four of those degrading. You see more and more people don't have the education they need for 21st century jobs. Millions of Americans have given up looking for work because of the state of our economy. Marriage is on the decline, and the number of children born into wedlock has continued to grow. And this is not about passing moral judgment on anyone, but the facts are pretty apparent that children that are born into unstable families struggle to succeed, are much more likely to not finish school, much more likely to live in poverty, and much less likely to graduate from college. The primary responsibility of turning that around relies on our families and us as people in our society, but there should be nothing government does to discourage these things, and we do need political leaders that recognize that you can't have a strong country without strong people.
Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, we thank you very, very much for your time, and we hope you'll visit with us again real soon on America's Forum.
Thank you so much.
An important postscript to that pre-recorded interview, the question about the FAA ban on flights into Israel obviously made moot, at least in terms of the fact that the FAA has restored the ability of American jetliners to fly into Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, but Senator Rubio offering his thoughts on that. So gang, we covered a lot of territory with Marco Rubio, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more.
A little more about his comments on immigration and border security.
We're going to get to that. Also coming up next, Lisa Ruth on this Malaysian jetliner. Stay with us.
Meet Mary. She loves to shop online with her debit card. And so does Bill, an identity thief who stole Mary's identity, took over her bank accounts, and stole her hard-earned money. Unfortunately, millions of Americans just like you learn all it may take is a little misplaced information to wreak havoc on your life. This is identity theft, and no one helps stop it better than LifeLock. LifeLock offers the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If Mary had LifeLock's bank account alerts, she may have been notified before it was too late. LifeLock's credit notification service is on the job 24/7. As soon as they detect a threat to your identity within their network, they will alert you, protecting you before the damage is done. LifeLock has the most comprehensive identity theft protection available, guarding your social security number, your money, your credit, even the equity in your home.
My years as a prosecutor taught me that we all need to protect ourselves from crime. In today's world, that includes identity theft. It's a serious problem. We all have to protect ourselves.
While identity theft can't be completely stopped, no one works harder to protect you than LifeLock. You even get a $1 million service guarantee. That's security no one can beat. You have so much to protect and nothing to lose when you call LifeLock right now and get 60 days of identity theft protection risk-free. That's right, 60 days risk-free. Use promo code NOTME. Order now and get this document shredder to keep sensitive documents out of the wrong hands. A $29 value, free. Don't wait until you become the next victim. Call 1-800-918-3128 for 60 days of LifeLock identity theft protection risk-free and get a document shredder free. Use promo code NOTME. Call 1-800-918-3128 now.
I realized at that moment these people really needed us. And I was going to make a difference right here in my community.
Be there for your community at NationalGuard.com.
Welcome back. Following the crash of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, the United States now reportedly prepared to send a team of military advisors into Ukraine to assist with taking a look at what transpired there. Pro-Russian rebels battling Ukrainian government forces. Rebels have claimed responsibility for shooting down 2 Ukrainian military jets, but they have denied bringing down Flight 17, rejecting accusations from U.S. officials. Here to break down the latest on the plane shoot down and the U.S. perhaps sending advisors to the Ukraine, LigNet analyst, former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth. Lisa, welcome back.
Good to be here.
So, what type of support is America offering in this situation?
So far, it's still unclear. We don't really know, but I think it's more of a message. I think if you look at what Obama has been really slammed for, in the U.S. as a whole, is not doing anything. And I think this message is, okay, we're doing something. We are going to send people in. I think the first thing is going to be to try to secure the crash site, although frankly, I don't know what else we really need to learn from that. But I really think the important point is the message here.
Well, a message coming in terms of where this country pays for priorities with its pocketbook. President Obama revealing earlier this week he approved a plan to send $5 million in body armor, night vision goggles, and communications equipment to the Ukrainians. Will this be broadened to include some arms for the Ukrainians?
I think it could be, and the question is if we'll know about it. You know, if we look at the Syrian situation, for example, it started with MREs and backing, and then it turned out later to be weapons. I don't think it's out of the question for Ukraine, but again, Ukraine has weapons. The issue so far has been they've asked for training. They want support. There could be more weapons. We are not going to see boots on the ground, I'll tell you that much.
Well, some have likened this to a return to the Cold War, or Cold War, the sequel. Is that just a little too facile an explanation? Are we going to see an icing over of relations between the U.S. and the Soviet Union?
I think we've already seen some of that with Russia. And certainly, I have a friend who's a Russian expert who said, you have to remember what Putin is playing is not chess. He's playing poker. And he knows very well what's in his hand, but more importantly, he knows very well what's in Obama's hand. And what I do think we're going to see is continuation of the sanctions. I think we're going to see continuation of rhetoric. But when it really comes down to it, and JD, you and I have talked about this, we need Russia for things like Syria, Iraq, Iran, a lot of those things. How far are we really going to be willing to go to jeopardize those positions?
Not to mention hitching rides to the International Space Station, since we've scuttled our ability to put our own astronauts into space.
Absolutely.
This almost sounds like a question for an exam, Lisa. Compare and contrast this situation with the so-called proxy wars of the Cold War era.
Again, similar. Certainly when you're looking at Russia, I think one of the issues is what Russia wants. And that's some of what we don't even really know, although we can start to extrapolate. And it does go back to the same idea of the proxy wars. If you remember back when this started with Ukraine, Russia wanted to keep Ukraine in its sphere of influence. That was a lot of what was happening with the proxy wars. They wanted to maintain their areas of control. I think that is what we're seeing. I don't think Putin wants to take over all of eastern Ukraine. It would be very difficult. Russians are a minority there. But he is sending a real clear message, and he is not backing down. He's remaining defiant and saying, we don't want you guys to go to the West.
Geopolitical implications abound, especially in the shoot down of the jetliner from Malaysia. Russia continues to deny any fault for this plane crash. In fact, a statement from Russia's deputy defense minister says the United States has no proof to back up accusations. Here's Anatoly Antonov. He says it was declared that the data collected by U.S. technical intelligence and the satellite photographs prove that the rocket was launched from the territory controlled by the rebels. Where is this data? Why is it not presented to the public? Are they, so to say, still making it? Now, it's been interesting, Lisa. Yesterday, the press accounts were that there's no evidence of direct involvement. But we just had Senator Rubio on that pre-recorded interview. He's on the Senate Intelligence Committee. He says in his mind there is a direct link between the Russians and the shoot down of this airliner.
Absolutely. And it depends on what you want to call direct. There's no question Russia is arming them. There's no question Russia is training them. There's no question that Russian special forces are parts of the separatists. Did Putin sneak across the border and push the button? No. But it depends on where you want to look. You mentioned the geopolitical implications. Fascinating looking at the press around the world on this. China's coverage very clearly has said the United States has no proof. This is the Ukrainians' fault because they're allowing war there. Look at what Brazil says. Brazil is saying, not Russia's fault. Ukraine needs to get control of its territory. South Africa, India. So you look geopolitically, the West is kind of standing on its own here.
Well, now this is a very interesting development, and it shows the value. At times we often talk about human intelligence assets abroad, but there is something to be said for the analyst and the internet and the analyst and you, Lisa Ruth, hard at work from right here in the studio taking a look at what's going on. So you are saying in terms of public opinion, even the so-called non-aligned nations, Brazil, South Africa, etc., tend to be siding with the Russian version of events?
So far, that's what we're seeing. And then let's take it a step further. Right now, Putin's popularity rating, now before the crash, 83%. This is despite the fact that sanctions are having an effect. The economy is hurting a little bit, but he's getting a lot of praise. So it is kind of fascinating to look at that and how it's playing out.
What is the appeal? There was one press account that referred to Putin as Russia's bare-chested Reagan. Is it the macho nature? Is it just such a contrast now with our president and his style of leadership?
I think it's a bunch of different things. If you look at Russia as a culture, and historically, they value strength. There's no question about it. Reformers in this country, when the wall fell down over there, you look at Gorbachev as a great guy. Russia, not so much. They saw him as weak. They saw him as taking away their pensions. They saw him as hurting them geopolitically. the strong man in Russia is always revered. That's who gets the attention. I do think there's something to, whether you're pro-Obama or not, he's a thoughtful guy. He's much more quiet. He's not out there bare-chested riding horses. It is quite a contrast.
Well, and it's interesting, and to give his supporters their due, you think back to the 2008 campaign, President Obama, then Senator Obama, was compared favorably with Star Trek's Mr. Spock, being non-emotional, being a very cool customer. But that different style in leadership, for whatever reason, seems to be redounding to the benefit of Mr. Putin and the Russians, despite this shooting down of a jetliner with almost 300 killed, for goodness sakes. Now, another thing you brought up in passing that I don't want to pass up on, and this is what we called in the old days of the Cold War the Sino-Soviet relationship, always searching for alliteration. Nowadays it translates Chinese-Russian relationship. That has been renewed and strengthened.
Absolutely. They recently signed this enormous energy bill. And when we're talking about sanctions, China is giving Russia a great escape valve, as are the BRICS for that matter. They can sell to Brazil, India, etc. There is no question the Chinese are aligning with Russia, again, both on the crash issue, on the separatist issue, and economically.
45 years ago, we saw a border clash between communist China and the Soviet Union. But in the passage of time and allied economic interests, we have a very different picture today with what's going on. President Putin, his popularity, the Russian love of a strong man, does this popularity continue to grow or to be managed successfully in the Russian Federation?
Well, there is trouble brewing here. The business people are not happy. And if the next set of sanctions comes down from the EU, if they manage to get a cohesive, coherent plan together, which is debatable, but businesses in Russia are starting to say, wait a minute, we can't keep doing this. We need some relief here. It will depend on how far this goes. But, look at Iran. The sanctions certainly didn't cause regime change there.
Well, as always, a sobering analysis with our daily intelligence brief. Lisa Ruth, we thank you very much for your insights, and we look forward to our next visit.
I appreciate it.
And just a reminder, for in-depth analysis and forecasting, not only on the plane crash investigation, but on so many other topics dealing with our relationship with powers overseas, you need to go to lignet.com. Stay with us. The crisis in the Middle East, trouble around the globe, or globe as it may be, not enough to deter our president from his fundraising. Our man in Washington, Newsmax John Gizzi, with his take a little bit later in our program. But when we come back, a news update. And as always, our long-standing invitation. If you've got a comment on the news we cover, why don't you tweet us your remarks at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum. Our program continues following this timeout.
Looking for a home loan? Welcome to PennyMac, one of America's leading mortgage lenders, where all we do are home loans. PennyMac offers a neighborhood of home loan options. First-time buyers? Call PennyMac for some low down payment options as low as 3.5%. Looking for an FHA loan, jumbo loan, VA loan, or conventional loan? Call PennyMac. Want to refinance to save money? Yup, call PennyMac. Home underwater? PennyMac offers a government-sponsored HARP program that can help you reduce your interest rate. So if you're thinking home loans, PennyMac leads the pack with low rates week in and week out, so you know you're going to save money and get a fast closing. So call PennyMac now. We're probably helping some of your neighbors with their loans, and we're ready to help you too. Call the experts in home loans in the next 10 minutes to get a free $50 Home Depot gift card. Call 800-424-1956, 800-424-1956, 800-424-1956.
Technology gives you security. Technology gives you control. And now, technology gives you home security and control in a new and revolutionary way. Introducing Plug and Protect from LiveWatch Security, an easy-to-use wireless security system customized just for your home, controlled from any smartphone, tablet, or computer, and monitored by professionals 24/7. Go to livewatch.com to get Plug and Protect interactive security delivered to your door. arm or disarm your system from anywhere. Lock or unlock your doors. Turn your lights off or on. Even oversee your home with live video. With Plug and Protect, your security system is configured, tested, and then shipped directly to your home. No wires, no installers, just peel and place. Go to livewatch.com because with Plug and Protect, we customize your security to fit your home. The Plug and Protect secret is technology. With technology, you buy airline tickets without a travel agent. You trade stocks without a stockbroker. Now, with Plug and Protect, you can protect your home without an installer, pushy salesman, or a long contract.
Every day, the kids got out of school before I left work. I worried whether they were home okay. But then I found Plug and Protect from LiveWatch. And now I see when they open the front door, so I know they're home safe. LiveWatch helps me stay in touch and in control.
Founded by a paramedic in Kansas, serving tens of thousands of homes in all 50 states, and trusted by policemen and firemen throughout the country, LiveWatch is the new choice for home security. No door-to-door salespeople, no messy installers, no long-term contracts, just plug and protect. Now you too can enjoy the home security and control you want for your family. Try Plug and Protect in your home for a full 90 days. Included is our hassle-free guarantee. Go to livewatch.com. Plug and Protect is not available in stores, so go to livewatch.com right now. That's livewatch.com.
Back now on America's Forum with Francesca Page and John Bogman, J.D. Hayworth, and actually, it's as if
we'll get to you.
This is a voiceover. You see the images of John Bogman and Francesca Page. Now, the news.
All right, thank you very much for that. We're still trying to get everything worked out here, moving chairs around here out on the set. But of course, Francesca, a lot to talk about here. News taking place around the world, and we'll start this Newsmax Now update with an update about the flight ban into Israel. Let's get started. Well, the FAA has now said that U.S. flights can resume to Israel, even though Hamas says Israel's Ben Gurion Airport is still a target for rockets. The ban was lifted late last night after the agency said it reviewed new information and measures that the Israeli government is now taking to reduce the risks. The FAA's decision to suspend the flights has come under fire from those who claim that decision was based on politics, and that includes Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
Yesterday, we saw the FAA make an unprecedented decision to ban all air travel to the nation of Israel. And I've asked today the very simple question, did President Obama just unilaterally launch economic boycotts on the nation of Israel?
Fair enough question. Well, that question was posed to State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf. She was asked about the political pushback from people like Ted Cruz and Michael Bloomberg. Harf downplayed any PR victories this may cause for Hamas and says the decision was solely based on safety concerns.
The rocket landed very close to the airport, and I think if you were a passenger on an airliner taking off or landing at that airport, you'd be pretty nervous about that. Okay. Iron Dome has been very successful, but security of American citizens is top priority, and that's why the FAA made this decision.
And speaking with the British Foreign Secretary today, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu showed his disgust towards the way Hamas uses innocent people to help them in their fight against Israel.
This use of human shields is extraordinarily cynical, it's grotesque, it's inhuman. But what is equally grotesque is that Israel was condemned in the Human Rights Council.
The US, Israel, and the European Union all consider Hamas a terrorist organization, though the United Nations doesn't.
And the man you just saw right there on the screen briefly, that's the U.S. Chief of Staff, General Ray Odierno. He's now admitting that America has allowed their, quote, capabilities in NATO to slip. And with the current situation in Ukraine and Russia, it was imperative that they rebuild in that same area.
I think over the last several years, we've allowed our capabilities in NATO to slip. And I think you have to have certain capabilities. And so we have to rebuild this. I mean, we have to understand where our capabilities are.
Well, General Odierno there made those comments Wednesday while addressing a security conference in Aspen, Colorado.
And Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is dominating the 2016 presidential race, at least at this stage in Florida. That according to a new Quinnipiac poll. She's way ahead of others in the Democratic field, which in this poll includes Senator Elizabeth Warren and Veep Joe Biden. And when she's matched up against Republicans, including former Governor Jeb Bush, she's looking pretty good too. Respondents chose Clinton by a wide margin when asked about the former First Lady and Secretary of State Governor George Bush versus the GOP field.
Yeah, Jeb Bush, the former governor of Florida, of course, the closest one to Hillary Clinton. And we talk about the 2016 race as if it's actually started. In many ways it has when you look at these poll numbers here. But Clinton, when stacked up against many of the Republican field, she came in high 40s, low 50 percentile, while Jeb Bush in the 20s, Marco Rubio 18, Ted Cruz 10%, and they're on down. So interesting to take a look at this. Hillary Clinton, many people in Washington, at least according to this Quinnipiac poll, are saying she's got a lot of vulnerabilities right now, but at least what this poll and the pollsters who took it say, this shows that she's still a very sharp and strong candidate in the Sunshine State.
Again, understand, this is dealing exclusively with Florida, but something else you said we need to remember. Polls are snapshots of a point in time. And while there's been much speculation about 2016, technically that campaign has not yet started. Traditionally, front runners do what? They run in front. But front runners historically have oftentimes proven their vulnerability when campaigns start. Campaigns are campaigns for a simple reason: to persuade people to vote for you. And so, devoid of a campaign, of course you're going to see astronomical numbers for the former Secretary of State and New York Senator and First Lady all rolled into one. That's what happens at this point in time.
We also want to talk about the guy we featured at the very beginning of our program here today, and a guy we're going to take a closer look at his words coming up later in the show, and that's Marco Rubio. Clinton, obviously, Hillary Clinton, the big favorite in this poll, but when you ask Florida voters what they think about Marco Rubio, he's faring pretty well as well, 49%, not 50% as guys would like to see, but 49% versus 37%. Those are the folks who like what Rubio is doing versus those who do not.
Well, again, when you drill down and these questions, you have follow-up questions, you have what we call push polling, where you read something that may be very popular that a person is associated with or something that's unpopular, that can change the numbers. And again, that points out the guideposts on the way to a legitimate campaign. So that's what we're seeing again.
And then the quote here from Quinnipiac, Francesca, and I want to get your take on this, is that Clinton's, quote, assets overwhelm any vulnerabilities. Fair enough?
To an extent. What I actually really wanted to bring up, John, was I love the Washington Post's comment today that Darth Vader, they said, was polling higher than any potential 2016 candidate, which really makes one wonder, are people excited about this upcoming election or not?
Well, you heard Lisa Ruth talking about the Russians admiring strength. You can't argue Darth Vader was a very strong leader.
I can see a comedy sketch coming with Darth Vader at the podium.
Pretty good debate, I would think, maybe at the podium.
The debate sketch I can see is on the way, so we'll see about that. Speaking of polling, when we return, are talking points from the two major parties on illegal immigration about to change? A new study by Pew suggests that might happen. John Gizzi is next as we continue here on America's Forum.
Smile. No matter how well you provide for your family today, if you don't have life insurance, their future may be at risk. Think about what would happen if you were gone. Would they struggle to pay the bills and face an uncertain future? They don't have to. You can help guarantee those you love $200,000, $500,000, $750,000 or more with life insurance through AIG Direct. We'll help you get more for your money, up to 70% more. Just look, less than $14 a month buys a 40-year-old man a $250,000 term life policy. That's up to 3 times what you can get from other companies for the same price. No wonder millions of people rely on AIG companies. The call is free, the quote is free, and there's no obligation. Make the future more secure for those you love. Call now so you can sleep better at night.
For a free quote, call 1-800-558-5246 or visit AIGDirect.com.
Now everyone who uses catheters can get a better catheter with Liberator Medical's free catheter sample pack. These new catheters are better than ever, easier to use, more convenient, comfortable, virtually pain-free. Don't wait. Call now and get your free catheter sample pack. There's the all-new compact catheter for women. Pre-lubricated, no drips, no mess. Fits in your purse. The self-lubricated catheter. It lubricates itself in the package. Comfortable, no mess. The closed system catheter. Pre-lubricated with its own collection bag. Proven to reduce UTIs. The discreet pocket catheter. Curved to fit in your pocket to go anywhere. The polished eyelet catheter for micro-smooth comfort. Reduces friction and pain. Call now. We'll also bill Medicare and your insurance for you. Call for your free catheter sample pack with free shipping. Call Liberator Medical.
Call 1-800-344-6777. That's 1-800-344-6777.
Welcome back. President Obama has asked for it, and the House and Senate have offered legislative plans about what to do concerning the crisis on our southern border with Mexico, but both houses take a very different approach. With more on that, plus how talking points from both parties may change dealing with illegal immigration, John Gizzi, Newsmax White House correspondent and chief political columnist. John, thanks for Skyping in from the District of Columbia.
Thank you, JD. It's a pleasure to be back here, and glad to see you're back in the proverbial saddle and battling that cold.
I'm still a little frayed around the vocal cords, but we're getting it done. Now, some other things that can be frayed at times. The legislative process. President Obama asked for what, close to $4 billion? Harry Reid says give it to him. Meantime, the House yesterday, Speaker Boehner coming out saying, no, we'll go maybe $1.5 billion, but we have to have border enforcement. You've got that going. At the same time, we know members of the House and Senate pay attention to polls and different reports. The Pew Research study showing that more than 80% of who the dominant media culture calls, quote, children, in fact, are really teenagers. You've got people coming in, I believe it was in excess of 90% in 2013. This year, 84% teenagers. Does this end up being a game changer in terms of talking points and the public acknowledgement of who's really coming across the southern border?
Insufficient data at this point, JD, and let me tell you why. Just look at your calendar and you'll see that there are less than 2 weeks of work days for the Congress before it adjourns for the summer. The president will leave in the first week of August for his Martha's Vineyard vacation. Congress will be out of town. Some say the Republic is safe for the month of August. In any event, that's a very short time to shorten the gap between $4.1 billion as the president wants for this border security project, and the $1.5 million that Republicans say they'll give, $1.7 in other accounts. In addition, there's the question of 40 immigration judges that'll be on the border. Republicans are a little skeptical about this. Remember, Republicans historically do not like to enlarge courts or create more judicial slots, even in times of emergencies. And then finally, there's the dispute over whether more National Guard troops should be dispatched to the border. The administration asks why, when people are just coming over and the guards there are just taking care of them and taking care of their needs. Congress sees it another way. My guess is that they'll be eyeball to eyeball, and in the next 2 weeks, neither side will blink on this.
So that means essentially it just stays in limbo right through the summer recess.
Exactly. The term in Washington, JD, and you know it well, is kicking the can. Congress will return in September, and they may do something at the time. I might add that this is a double-edged sword. Because of the disagreements, poll numbers are increasingly showing voters disappointed with Congress in general. Now, how that will translate, I'm not sure, but there's a number of primaries coming up in August around the country, and I have no doubt that the actions of Congress and the administration on the border situation will play a role in those races.
John, you mentioned a minute ago that the president is preparing for his vacation out on Martha's Vineyard. Now, he's just spent a few days out west fundraising. Is this
now?
Yeah, he's still out there fundraising for Democratic candidates. Is this going to hurt him, or can he pawn this off as something that has to be done to help his party and help his friends in the Senate and the House?
I will tell you this, JD, and I don't put this past Barack Obama. I saw him do it when it looked as though government would close when there was going to be no money to fund it at the end of 2012. When it looked like there would be a case of government workers not being paid and government functions interrupted, the president sent his family on to Hawaii, and he stayed for an extra few days until a deal could be reached. And I remember that very well. I remember his final news conference in the executive office building. So he may well just try to do this. I would say they were a lot further along on the fiscal confrontation than they are on immigration right now.
So you see him perhaps, as we saw with Obamacare when they delayed their Christmas vacation to Hawaii, as has happened again in another instance where the president sent the family on ahead and he stayed there in Washington trying to work out a deal. You still believe there's some wiggle room for that kind of gamesmanship or brinksmanship?
If the president wants to use his political capital on this particular issue, and again, let me tell you something. My fellow members of the White House Correspondents Association will tell you to a man or woman that this administration is the tightest in terms of leaks and sources. They control the flow of news that comes outside the White House. As you know, when they banned reporters and cameras, or banned cameras, reporters were allowed from the Apollo, Ben, and the Moon. They can easily deny coverage to events, sometimes, which many Americans would like to see. So I'm not exactly sure what's on the president's mind. All I can say is, as they used to say in the movie serials, stay tuned till next week.
About a minute remaining, John. One of the stories coming out of the president's Southern California swing, holding up traffic in LA with a motorcade. A woman in labor was stopped from crossing a street because the motorcade was coming through. Is that a human interest story that offers a metaphor for what's going on with our border situation?
Oh, I'm sure that I have a colleague who's very enterprising and creative who's going to make it one. There are always unfortunate circumstances when the president travels, no matter where he goes. And I was in New York the same day that he came up for an event. And it just becomes very difficult to move because of the protection and the security that's there and the number of cars. And some of us still have to go to work.
Yep, the commuters have trouble, and so do women in labor, apparently. So much for being a friend of labor. Hey, John Gizzi, thanks so much for your comments. We appreciate them very much. And America's Forum will continue following this timeout.
Meet Mary. She loves to shop online with her debit card. And so does Bill, an identity thief who stole Mary's identity, took over her bank accounts, and stole her hard-earned money. Unfortunately, millions of Americans just like you learn all it may take is a little misplaced information to wreak havoc on your life. This is identity theft, and no one helps stop it better than LifeLock. LifeLock offers the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If Mary had LifeLock's bank account alerts, she may have been notified before it was too late. LifeLock's credit notification service is on the job 24/7. As soon as they detect a threat to your identity within their network, they will alert you, protecting you before the damage is done. LifeLock has the most comprehensive identity theft protection available, guarding your social security number, your money, your credit, even the equity in your home.
My years as a prosecutor taught me that we all need to protect ourselves from crime. In today's world, that includes identity theft. It's a serious problem. We all have to protect ourselves.
While identity theft can't be completely stopped, no one works harder to protect you than LifeLock. You even get a $1 million service guarantee. That's security no one can beat. You have so much to protect and nothing to lose when you call LifeLock right now and get 60 days of identity theft protection risk-free. That's right, 60 days risk-free. Use promo code NOTME. Order now and get this document shredder to keep sensitive documents out of the wrong hands. A $29 value, free. Don't wait until you become the next victim. Call 1-800-918-3128 for 60 days of LifeLock identity theft protection risk-free and get a document shredder free. Use promo code NOTME. Call 1-800-918-3128 now.
Are you suffering from lower back pain?
Do you wake up with nagging aches and stiffness? Now you can stop suffering and relieve your pain with Chirobac.
The drug-free in-home treatment for back pain.
All it takes is just 10 minutes of soothing treatment from the comfort of your own bed, couch, or floor.
It's like having your own personal chiropractor right in your home.
I use my hands in the office to provide passive motion to the spine of somebody who's experiencing pain. And that passive motion is replicated by the Chirobac.
It's like having this personal chiropractor do the motion that I'm used to when I go to a chiropractor.
If you can lie down to rest, you can get rid of back pain with Chirobac. It's that easy.
All it takes is 10 minutes a day.
It's like magic. It opens the whole spine up and you're free again.
The secret is Chirobac's proprietary technology. A fusion
of oscillation therapy and continuous passive.
The pressure between the vertebrae, allowing your spine to open up and decompress.
It's amazing.
Open up and decompress.
It's amazing how much tension it can release in so short a time.
Chirobac is clinically proven to provide long-lasting relief.
In fact, Chirobac was proven 200% more effective than inversion therapy. It even proved more effective in relieving lower back pain than exercise.
Call now and try Chirobac risk-free for not 30 days, but 60 days with our triple guarantee. If Chirobac does not relieve your back pain, return it and we'll refund the purchase price, refund the shipping charge, and even pay the return postage.
So give Chirobac a try today. Chirobac. Relief at last.
Visit trychiro.com right now or call 1-800-334-9816 for your risk-free trial. That's 1-800-334-9816. Call now.
Rejoined by Francesca Page, J.D. Hayworth welcoming you back to America's Forum because it is your turn. And the topic remains illegal immigration.
Absolutely. Let's hear what our viewers have to say, JD. The first comment we have here is coming from Amelie J. As someone living in California, I have seen too many illegals come in and damage our neighborhoods and towns. Crime has risen, property values have fallen.
Jingles has this to say. The Attorney General of Texas said 90% of these criminal illegals are adults with their children. Send them home ASAP. Do not spend 1 cent on them. We are bankrupt as a nation, and citizens have no jobs.
And no loser calling in here, please, these are not children. You have been had again by the liberal media. These are young men who have been in gangs in their country, drug runners and cartel members. In their country, drug runners and cartel members.
Ken looks at it this way. A one for all of them would cost less than $40 million. Send these lawbreakers home.
And Navy vet, how about the House-funded tent city in the WH White House grounds? With funds to transport as many illegals as we can to cram in there. Hey, if they aren't at risk to our health and safety, then it's okay, right?
Fed up with Big Pharma says this. Seal the borders and refuse entry. No lodging, no food, no medical. Stop sending a message that illegals, or let me rephrase that. Stop sending a message to illegals that in America, they will receive a free ride. Francesca, it obviously inspires a lot of comments. Earlier today, we heard from Marco Rubio, and we're going to revisit the comments where he said, in retrospect, his participation in the so-called Gang of Eight bill on the Senate side, the mistake was failing to insist on enforcement of the borders.
Right.
And it's interesting, the Wall Street Journal, our executive producer brought me this article just during the break. Now, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush and his frequent contributor on a recent book, Clint Bolick, a frequent contributor on a variety of articles, Clint Bolick at the Goldwater Institute, have what they're calling the solution to border disorder. The subhead from the Wall Street Journal, the best antidote to illegal immigration is a functioning system of legal immigration. So it appears to me, the politician in me sees Governor Jeb, that illegal immigration is a, quote, act of love. Obviously, a lot of people are going to say, as we used to say in the House, revise and extend their remarks on this subject, because the polling is showing a clear majority of Americans have real problems with what is transpiring on our southern border. Now, we're going to move a little further than our southern border to Central America, to what was once a part of the nation of Colombia, that became an independent nation in its own right as it brought forth a great canal. That's the subject of this American Moment.
It took 34 years to build, but on August 15th, 1914, the Panama Canal was officially opened for business and was quickly crowned one of the 7 wonders of the modern world. The 51-mile-long and 10-mile-wide canal was originally begun by the French, but abandoned after 9 years and the loss of over 20,000 of their workers from disease-infected jungles. President Theodore Roosevelt believed the completion of the canal was essential to American security and prosperity, so he negotiated with the French to purchase the canal's properties and dredging equipment. But when negotiations with Colombia over a canal treaty broke down, Roosevelt backed a local bloodless revolution that lasted only a few hours. And on November 3rd, 1903, the nation of Panama was born. With the opening of the Panama Canal, the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans were joined, reducing a ship's journey from New York to San Francisco by 9,000 miles. Roosevelt's vision made the canal a reality, and the feat helped make America a world power. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax TV.
The psoriasis on my feet was so bad that it felt as if I were walking on broken glass.
If you suffer from psoriasis, you know it can feel like a curse.
I was hiding in the house all the time. I didn't want to be out with the public at all, didn't want people seeing me.
If you're tired of the pain and embarrassment of your psoriasis and would like to take control of it, then you want Extract by Photomedics, the global leader in targeted therapy for psoriasis. Extract can clear your psoriasis in weeks with no harmful side effects. Extract treats all psoriasis areas. The in-office treatment takes no time at all.
After the treatment, often I hear, I couldn't even feel anything. Are you done?
You do not feel a thing.
She'd go zzz, 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 and then it would be done.
Extract is cleared by the FDA and recommended by over 2,000 dermatologists.
I was seeing results within like 2 or 3 treatments.
Extract is covered by all major insurance companies and Medicare.
One of the worst areas was my right elbow, and after about 2 months, you can see it's totally clear.
Act now and you can qualify to be reimbursed for any copays until you see results.
It feels great. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, now I know how everyone else feels that has a healthy scalp.
So call now for your no-cost treatment at an Extract clinic conveniently located near you. We can see you right away.
For all the folks who have given up hope on their psoriasis and felt like there is no solution, I would love for them to come in and give our extract treatment a try and see what a difference it can make in their lives.
Stop suffering from psoriasis. Live clear, live free with Extract.
Call 1-800-741-0957 for your no-cost extract treatment at a location near you, or go to useextract.com right now. So call 1-800-741-0957.
Alongside Francesca Page and John Bogman, J.D. Hayworth welcoming you back to Hour 2 of America's Forum here from Newsmax TV. Alan Dershowitz is going to join us in just a few minutes to talk about what is going on with Israel. Interesting to hear Lisa Ruth in the first hour talk about just the changing attitudes worldwide in terms of media perception, even of the Russians. And we've seen the world turning on Israel, especially in Europe.
With the internet today, you can get these stories that they're being reported in Russia and elsewhere translated into English, and some of the news is astounding. It's surreal to hear about these stories coming out. That is perhaps a topic for a different day. Also interesting, or it will be interesting, to get Dershowitz's take on what's happening right now and the reports that Hezbollah might be joining Hamas now in the ongoing problems that we see every single day in Israel. Meantime, a lot of other stuff to talk about as well. Let's get started with the Newsmax Now update. And as the border crisis continues, Republicans are still trying to find a plan that all of the caucus can get behind. A great news story up on Newsmax.com right now shows that conservatives are slamming House Speaker John Boehner's newly announced $1.5 billion option. Boehner's plan is significantly lower than the president's $3.7 billion request, but many still say there should be no additional spending of taxpayer dollars to house undocumented or illegal children. In fact, some Republicans say the federal government needs to send all those illegal kids back to Central America right away. Louisiana GOP Congressman John Fleming says the border crisis is, quote, a problem created by the DACA law. DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It's one of President Obama's executive orders, and it allows minors to stay in the U.S. if they were brought here by their illegal immigrant parents. Fleming says any solution to the problem must require the president to rescind his order on DACA. Also, co-founder of Tea Party Patriots, Jenny Beth Martin, said this about Boehner's plan: no border bailout, period. Also referring to the president's plan, Boehner's $1.5 billion option slashes President Obama's, again, by more than half, but the GOP's conservative wing, as you heard there, criticizing both Boehner's plan and the president's plan for being too expensive and too broad.
And an article in the Wall Street Journal is blasting President Obama for his lack of leadership on the global stage. The article criticizes Obama for ignoring major conflicts around the world so that he could focus on fundraising and domestic democratic politics. Mainly, the editorial by Daniel Henninger trashes the president for his weak response to Russia following the downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. Right now, a second Dutch military plane carrying victims of that Malaysian airline crash is headed for the Netherlands. Nearly 300 people, most of them Dutch, were killed when the plane was shot down by pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. Yesterday, the Dutch government held a national day of mourning for the victims of flight MH17. And an Al-Algeria flight carrying more than 100 people has vanished over northern Mali on its way back to Algeria. Authorities say they lost contact with the plane an hour after it took off today. Emergency teams are working to figure out what happened. The flight was traveling from Burkina Faso to Algeria when it went missing. The BBC is reporting the pilot notified air traffic control that it was changing course due to the weather. And the loss of this aircraft marks the third major incident involving an aircraft in just a week.
Meantime, Francesca, back on Capitol Hill, the hunt for missing IRS emails continues. IRS Commissioner John Koskinen was back in front of the House Oversight Committee for the third time in just 2 months this week. He continued to defend his agency, saying that they've done nothing wrong here. But members of the committee still aren't buying it, and they are determined to get to the bottom of the missing emails or some of the destroyed hard drives. And there are investigators now saying that some of those emails may be recoverable and floating around somewhere.
4 days after, on a Friday, 4 days after, we knew there was emails we were getting from Justice that we weren't getting from the Internal Revenue Service.
Well,
now, all I'm saying is that timing is pretty suspect.
Yeah.
One computer crashed, no, it was 7, no, it was 8, now it may be up to 20. We can confirm that there's no backup tapes that are available. Oh, we can't confirm that now. There may be one available.
You can understand Jim Jordan's frustration there, the Republican congressman responding to conflicting testimony given by Koskinen. Some lawmakers still believe those emails will prove the White House used the IRS to target conservative groups.
Well, now, we are going to move along to talk about the subject we broached earlier, John, and that is this curious way events are reported around the world and here in this country. And the question that we have to ask is this one: does anti-Semitism run rampant in today's mainstream media? According to former actor, comedian, and economist Ben Stein, yes, it does. Ben Stein, recently a guest on the Steve Malzberg Show here on Newsmax TV, Ben says the mainstream media exhibit a disturbing malice for Jews. Here's what else he had to say.
There's just a certain amount of Jew hatred in the media, especially in the elite media. There's just we've moved from right-wing anti-Semitism to left-wing anti-Semitism, and of course they try to pretend it's not anti-Semitism, it's really anti-Israel, but it's really anti-Semitism.
Well, here now to follow up on the remarks of Ben Stein with his own unique perspective, Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law School professor and a blogger at Newsmax.com. Alan, we thank you very much for your time this morning on America's Forum. And let's begin. It's good to have you as always. Do you agree with what Ben Stein had to say? Is there a growing element of anti-Semitism in our mainstream media?
Well, I would put it just a little differently. I think that if Israel were not the nation state of the Jewish people, we would not see this obsessive attention with its imperfections. If, for example, on the same day that Israel killed maybe 10 or 15 people in Gaza, in Syria, 700 people were killed that day. It didn't even make page 27 of the newspaper. There have been 160,000 Arabs and Muslims killed, Arabs and Muslims, in Syria during the course of this civil war, and it's been a back-page story, whereas when Hamas hides its fighters among civilians, and Israel has no choice but to respond and plays into Hamas's hands by directing its fire to civilian areas, and civilians are killed, and then Hamas shows the civilians on television. There's an obsessive focus on Israel's imperfections. If Israel were not the nation state of the Jewish people, that wouldn't exist. Now, that's true in the United States. In Europe, it's overt, old-fashioned anti-Semitism. The leading philosopher in Italy, a hard-left philosopher, said the other day that he would like to shoot all the Zionists, and then he used the B word for illegitimate children. And then he said that Zionism, by which he meant Judaism, is worse than Nazism. And he urged Europeans to fight along with Hamas, to join and volunteer, and to raise money to send more rockets to kill more Jews in Israel. If that's not anti-Semitism, I don't know what is. And the Prime Minister of France has recently said, look, this is anti-Semitism parading as anti-Zionism. And I think that's true in England, in France, in parts of Italy. These, after all, are the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the people who supported Hitler, who brought us the Holocaust. And it's not any surprise that Europe's disease for thousands of years has been anti-Semitism, so why be shocked that it focuses obsessively on the nation-state of the Jewish people? That's the way I would put it.
Alan, you mentioned the leftists in Europe and also the heritage of many there based on previous history in the 20th century. Ben Stein pointed out something that, curiously, some other folks use as an argument, the acknowledgement that any number of Jews have key position in today's media. And it seems that Ben says that these Jews distance themselves from their heritage. Why is that? Is it self-loathing? Is it a mistaken notion of social justice?
Than that.
Yeah.
It's more complicated. The left has made it a litmus test. If you want to be one of us, you have to really hate Israel. And I think it's become a test. Slate magazine, for example, which has lots and lots of Jewish writers, has become one of the most anti-Israel and indeed crossed the line to anti-Semitic publications in America. They published an absurd article the other day in which some idiot woman blamed Birthright, which is the group that brings young people to Israel to show them both sides of the conflict, blamed Birthright on the death of an American soldier that died fighting for Israel. That's how far Slate's prepared to go. And so it's become kind of voguish for even the soft left to show their strong association with young people in the left by distancing themselves from their heritage, from Israel, and becoming overtly favorable to organizations that discriminate against women, Hamas, that kill gays, that permit no religious freedom. It's so absurd to see the left join that. For when you have this guy Votimo, this Italian philosopher who himself is a strong advocate of gay rights, supporting Hamas. If Votimo ever set foot in Gaza, he'd be tortured and executed on the ground that he supports gay rights. Executed on the ground that he supports gay rights.
And what you were saying,
idea
Professor,
that these leftists are supporting the most only be explained by their hatred for the nation state of the Jewish people.
And what you're saying, Professor, about Zionism, comparing it to Nazism, really incendiary comments there. I do want to get your take real quickly on what's playing out with the Ben Gurion Airport right now. President Obama has been accused of having an anti-Israel basis, perhaps giving Hamas a PR victory. And yesterday, Senator Ted Cruz accused the president of using this 48-hour FAA ban as a type of economic boycott against Israel, saying here, quote, "This FAA flight ban may well represent a crippling blow for a key economic sector throughout both security through both security concerns and worries that additional bans will down more flights and strand more passengers. It hardly matters if or when the ban is lifted. At this point, the damage has already been done." Do you agree with Senator Cruz on this?
No, I don't. Senator Cruz is my student, and I consider him also, a friend. I think the FAA is an independent organization, and I don't think that the president is capable or would use passenger safety as a political tool. It appears that way externally, but, I know enough about the relationship between the White House and the FAA to be strongly doubtful that there is any such connection.
What about what Michael Bloomberg said recently? He was on CNN with Wolf Blitzer there and challenging the FAA ban. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Right.
And I think the State Department is just overreacting in typical bureaucratic fashion.
Political reasons for that?
Why would you think that?
Do you think it? I'm asking you.
That's ridiculous. Why would you think that? It's an outrage for you to accuse one of our agencies.
I'm just asking.
Just the allegation against our government, I personally take as an offense.
No.
I don't know, you don't know, and the other people don't know. But just the tone of the question of trying to create dissension, it's insulting to America.
How secure do you feel? I feel very secure. But
you want to make sure that's on television?
Of course, Wolf Blitzer there, a longtime correspondent for the Jerusalem Post, but getting an earful from Michael Bloomberg. What was your reaction when you saw that there, Professor?
Well, I think Michael was absolutely right. The FAA did overreact. The State Department has overreacted. Tel Aviv today is safer than New York, and Ben Gurion Airport's at least as safe as Kennedy Airport. But the FAA made its mistake independently, and now it's rectified the mistake, hopefully. I don't believe there was any political pressure on the White House or the State Department. I think they make their decisions independently. They tend to err on the side of the safety of Americans. I understand that, but I wouldn't put the blame on the White House. I don't think Obama is anti-Israel. I think he's concerned about Israel's security, and he, like many other people, is very concerned, as am I, about the civilian deaths. But I think the White House understands, and some of the White House deputies who've spoken out have made it clear that this is all the fault of Hamas, that Hamas puts its fighters in civilian areas and hospitals and then complains when Israel attacks the areas from which the rockets are coming. Israel has the right, under the laws of proportionality, to attack any military target that's sufficiently important to justify the damage to civilians, and that's what Israel is doing. It operates under the rules of proportionality.
Again, only about a minute left, Alan. I want to revisit this because it would seem diplomatically that things have gotten, rocky between the United States and Israel. Is that a fair assessment?
I don't think so. I think that John Kerry has been doing his best to bring about a ceasefire. He hasn't urged that the ceasefire start immediately. Israel has agreed with him. Israel has agreed to all the ceasefire proposals. Hamas, which thinks it's winning because Many of its soldiers are surviving. It's only causing the death of Palestinian civilians, about which it doesn't care, or put it differently, it favors the death of more and more Palestinian civilians. So why should it want a ceasefire? It doesn't want a ceasefire. Israel wants a ceasefire. So I don't see any big gulf between the United States and Israel on this issue. On Iran, I'm worried that a great gulf is developing over time, but we have to wait and see on that one.
Alan Dershowitz, as always, we thank you for your perspective, and we look forward to our next visit. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
When we return, what did he know and when did he know it? President Obama with conflicting messages. Our panel will break it down.
Technology gives you security. Technology gives you control. And now, technology gives you home security and control in a new and revolutionary way. Introducing Plug and Protect from LiveWatch Security, an easy-to-use wireless security system customized just for your home, controlled from any smartphone, tablet, or computer, and monitored by professionals 24/7. Go to livewatch.com to get Plug and Protect interactive security delivered to your door. Arm or disarm your system from anywhere. Lock or unlock your doors. Turn your lights off or on. Even oversee your home with live video. With Plug and Protect, your security system is configured, tested, and then shipped directly to your home. No wires, no installers, just peel and place. Go to livewatch.com because with Plug and Protect, we customize your security to fit your home. The Plug and Protect secret is technology. With technology, you buy airline tickets without a travel agent. You trade stocks without a stockbroker. Now, with Plug and Protect, you can protect your home without an installer, pushy salesman, or a long contract.
Every day, the kids got out of school before I left work. I worried whether they were home okay. But then I found Plug and Protect from LiveWatch. And now I see when they open the front door, so I know they're home safe. LiveWatch helps me stay in touch and in control.
Founded by a paramedic in Kansas, serving tens of thousands of homes in all 50 states, and trusted by policemen and firemen throughout the country, LiveWatch is the new choice for home security. No door-to-door salespeople, no messy installers, no long-term contracts, just Plug and Protect. Now you too can enjoy the home security and control you want for your family. Try Plug and Protect in your home for a full 90 days. Included is our hassle-free guarantee. Go to livewatch.com. Plug and Protect is not available in stores, so go to livewatch.com right now. That's livewatch.com.
Staring contest!
You still got it.
I know.
Come alive. You still got it.
I know.
Come alive with the forest. Visit discovertheforest.org.
I heard on the news about this story that Fast and Furious.
Well, let me take the IRS situation first. I first learned about it from the same news reports that I think most people learned about this. I think it was on Friday. Learned about this. I think it was on Friday.
Something we found out about.
I think we're reported first by your network out of Phoenix. I believe we learned about them through the reports. I will double check if that's not the case, but that's when we learned about them, and that's when, as I understand.
President Obama and his former press secretary there, Jay Carney, in a host of instances, saying they were unaware of scandals like the VA healthcare situation and Benghazi until hearing about them on the news. Now, however, the president apparently changing his tune. At a Democrat fundraiser near Seattle on Tuesday night, he told supporters, wait for it, he doesn't watch television news. Why? Quote, whatever they're reporting about, usually I know. So, are we to take the commander-in-chief at his word? And if so, what are the implications? Joining us now to debate that question, Kirsten Krakowski, Deputy Communications Director and National Press Secretary for the Republican National Committee, and Ben Wickler, progressive strategist and host of The Good Fight. Ben and Kirsten, thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us. Thanks.
It's a pleasure to be on with you,
Yes,
JD.
indeed. So, Ben, if we're to take the president at his word that he knew about some of these scandals, specifically with the VA, before they hit the news? There are serious implications, are there not?
Well, JD, I think both of us heard the president or read the president's remarks, and the key word there is usually. Usually he knows. I think what he's referring to there is things like Republican efforts to block access to birth control, to block comprehensive immigration reform, to block student debt reform, and to rebrand itself to be less repellent to young people, people of color, and women. Kirsten, how is that going?
I'm laughing. I'm laughing about your comments, but I'm also laughing at the fact that the president continues to try and have it both ways. Either he finds out about these scandals that everyone in America believes that he should know about because he's the commander-in-chief and because he should have a very good grasp of what's going on in his own government. But then now we're supposed to think, or we're supposed to believe that he actually doesn't read the news. I think it's a bunch of baloney. I think that it's laughable that he's trying to have it both ways, to tell you the honest truth.
Kirsten, our president made another interesting claim at this fundraiser, saying, and I quote, "I will say for all the Democrats around here, I'm not overly partisan." Kirsten, is this a pot, meat, kettle moment for the president yet again?
Well, yes. We just put out a video, actually. I just pressed send and an email to everybody, a video called Fundraiser in Chief. This is one of the most partisan political presidents we've ever had. He is most comfortable when he's on the stump, when he's campaigning. And so that's just he's campaigning. That's just laughable. It's ridiculous. Everyone's on to him. Things that this country needs to start focusing on. And frankly, it isn't helping the candidates that are out there running in the midterms. And that was kind of the point of my last email that I just sent, which was asking the question, is all of this fundraising while the president is getting bad reviews for fundraising while there's all these crises around the world and there's natural disasters happening on the West Coast, is all of this partisan rhetoric that we're hearing from the president, are his coattails really helping these Democrats running in red states in the midterm elections? I don't think so, and I think it's going to make for a very interesting 100 days as we round out this midterm election cycle.
Ben, Daniel Henninger, the Wall Street Journal, has penned a scathing editorial headlined, "Obama to World Drop Dead." He calls the president our most provincial chief executive in at least half a century, criticizing him for all these fundraisers. Henninger writes, in part, the progressive Democrats who displaced the Clinton machine in 2008 and came to power with Mr. Obama have no interest beyond consolidating political and electoral power inside the U.S. Not even the White House of Lyndon Johnson, the ultimate poll, was so purely politicized. And Ben, to think of it, it was Lyndon Johnson who called Richard Nixon, quote, a chronic campaigner. Certainly we understand the importance of raising money, but does this ever become harmful to the president and the Democrats, all this fundraising?
Well, let's consider the messenger here. The same columnist in 2008 when Russia here. The same columnist in 2008 when Russia invaded Georgia. He said that John McCain got a word about President Bush. It appears that he thought that clearing brush in Texas was a totally legitimate foreign policy, and somehow that President Obama's actions are telling the world to drop dead. President Obama has a few balls to juggle. One of them is to deal with world affairs. Another is to try to advance his domestic agenda. And it turns out that Republicans have one goal, which is stopping anything from happening on the minimum wage, shutting down the government to stop people from getting health insurance. 20 million do now. And in the face of that, the president could either just give up, or he could try to elect a Congress that's willing to do the work that the American people elected him to do. And I think that actually makes a lot of sense.
Well, we understand that fundraising is a part of electioneering and bringing the case to the people. Kirsten, Mr. Henninger continues to criticize the president's fundraising. In the column we've cited, he writes, the fundraising is a frantic effort to protect this new Democratic voter machine. The world doesn't vote, so the world doesn't decide that a world defined by events like Flight 17 does matter. Are international affairs, or this shooting down of the plane in the Ukraine, is that going to be one of the major issues in this midterm?
I think I think it's definitely part of it. I think that it speaks to control over anything that he is supposedly supposed to have control over, whether it be world affairs, whether supposed to have control over, whether it be world affairs, whether it be government mismanagement here in the state. Well, we're seeing it in the poll numbers. To be honest with you, we're seeing that Americans don't trust him. It doesn't matter if it's domestic or abroad. And this is the president who campaigned in 2007, 2008 of changing the world view of our presidency and of our country. And I think that now it's hard to listen to my colleague over there on the Democratic side trying to talk about trying to distance himself from that, and distance the president from that, and attack columnists and attack the press and attack Republicans. That's all we're hearing from the Democrats right now, and it's frankly really sad.
Obviously, whomever holds the presidency, regardless of their party label, the office is a magnet for criticism, and there has been some criticism of the president's response to what happened in the Ukraine and their comments to the downing of the airliner. Ben, I want you to listen to these comments, and we'll look for your response after we hear them all. We begin with the Prime Minister of Australia.
After the crime comes the cover-up. What we have seen is evidence tampering on an industrial scale, and obviously that has to stop.
There is also anger. There is anger that this could happen at all. There is anger that the murder of innocent men, women and children has been compounded by sickening reports of looting of victims' possessions and interference with the evidence. And there is rightly anger that a conflict that could have been curtailed by Moscow has instead been fomented by Moscow.
As we reflect on the immeasurable loss suffered by these families around the world, we are not only outraged at the attack itself, we are horrified and enraged by what has happened since, by the clear intention of some to obstruct an investigation into how the passenger and crew died.
Now's the time for President Putin and Russia to pivot away from the strategy that they've been taking and get serious about trying to resolve hostilities within you and respects the right of the Ukrainian people to make their own decisions about their own lives.
About a minute and a half remains. Ben, let's go to you for your response, comparing and contrasting those different responses from world leaders. Should our president have been tougher?
Look, all of us look at the crash with horror, and it's incredibly painful to see what happened and all these lives lost. And the president, in the comments you just played, wasn't talking about his emotions. He was talking about what Russia needs to do. I think the number one thing here is to bring peace to this crisis, and that's where I want the president of the United States to be focused. I think his, expressing of outrage isn't necessarily the thing that moves the chessboard forward on that. And if then, the path that gets us there is the right one.
Kirsten, about 30 seconds for you, ma'am.
Sure, real quick. I would agree that the president's expression of outrage is not moving anything forward, and I think that is why his activity over the last couple of days is really problematic. Pictures of him getting into limos after fundraisers in LA and San Francisco on the West Coast, going to the home of the producer of Scandal. Great show, love to watch it. But frankly, that is sending the wrong message to Russia, and it is sending the wrong message to everyone across the world that really wants this to be resolved.
Well, we'll have to leave it right there. Kirsten and Ben, we thank you very much for your comments. We'd love to hear from you at home. Why don't you tweet us your remarks at Newsmax TV, # America's Forum. We're coming right back.
Meet Mary. She loves to shop online with her debit card. And so does Bill, an identity thief who stole Mary's identity, took over her bank accounts, and stole her hard-earned money. Unfortunately, millions of Americans just like you learn all it may take is a little misplaced information to wreak havoc on your life. This is identity theft, and no one helps stop it better than LifeLock. LifeLock offers the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If Mary had LifeLock's bank account alerts, she may have been notified before it was too late. LifeLock's credit notification service is on the job 24/7. As soon as they detect a threat to your identity within their network, they will alert you, protecting you before the damage is done. LifeLock has the most comprehensive identity theft protection available, guarding your Social Security number, your money, your credit, guarding your Social Security number, your money, your credit, even the equity in your home.
My years of mine. In today's world, that includes identity theft. It's a serious problem. We all have to protect ourselves.
While identity theft can't be completely stopped, no one works harder to protect you than LifeLock. You even get a $1 million service guarantee. That's security no one can beat. You have so much to protect and nothing to lose. When you call LifeLock right now and get 60 days of identity theft protection risk-free. That's right, 60 days risk-free. Use promo code NOTME. Order now and get this document shredder to keep sensitive documents out of the wrong hands. A $29 value, free. Don't wait until you become the next victim. Call 1-800-918-3128 for 60 days of LifeLock identity theft protection risk-free and get a document shredder free. Use promo code NOTME. Call 1-800-918-3128 now.
Smile.
No matter how well you provide for your family today, if you don't have life insurance, their future may be at risk. Think about what would happen if you were gone. Would they struggle to pay the bills and face an uncertain future? They don't have to. You can help guarantee those you love $200,000, $500,000, $750,000 or more with life insurance through AIG Direct. We'll help you get more for your money, up to 70% more. Just look, less than $14 a month buys a 40-year-old man a $250,000 term life policy. That's up to 3 times what you can get from other companies for the same price. No wonder millions of people rely on AIG companies. The call is free, the quote is free, and there's no obligation. Make the future more secure for those you love. Call now so you can sleep better at night.
For a free quote, call 1-800-558-5246 or visit AIGdirect.com.
Welcome back to America's Forum right here on Newsmax TV. John Bachman, Francesca Page alongside here. Francesca, a lot going on here today and a lot to discuss, and we're going to talk a little bit more here later on in the program about our interview we had with Marco Rubio. Interesting comments today, both on what he believes actually took place in Ukraine with Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 and his position currently on the immigration reform. More to come on that. Stand by. But right now, we'll get started with a Newsmax Now update. And in Washington, House Republicans going on the attack yesterday over what they say is the latest mess, at least the latest mess we know about, in Obamacare. Fake identities being used to get insurance subsidies. Undercover investigators using those fake IDs were able to get taxpayer-funded subsidies for health insurance under the health care law, that according to congressional investigators. The weak link seemed to be the call centers that handled applications for people unable to get through online. Investigators said they were able to get insurance under fake names in 11 out of 18 attempts, even after healthcare.gov's online system flagged some applications as being problematic.
And John, meanwhile, President Obama plans to issue an executive order to develop privacy guidelines for commercial drones operating in U.S. airspace. The website Politico reports. The order would put the National Telecommunications and Information Administration in charge of developing the guidelines. Consumer groups and some lawmakers have said drones could violate people's privacy by looking into their homes or backyards.
That also applies to commercial drones, not just the military ones like we saw in that video. And also a good update to bring you right now. That Christian Sudanese woman who was sentenced to death for not renouncing her Christian faith has finally arrived in Italy, and even today she got to meet the Pope. Miriam Ibrahim had spent over a month at the U.S. Embassy in Khartoum after her death sentence was finally lifted. She, of course, received a flood of international support during the ordeal. Sudanese officials had been holding her inside the country. They claimed she attempted to leave using false travel documents. But today, Ibrahim and her daughter, as you can see right here, had a chance to meet with Pope Francis at the Vatican after they arrived in Rome.
And a senator from Montana is coming under fire for allegedly plagiarizing his master's thesis. The New York Times reported yesterday that Senator John Walsh lifted about 2/3 of his 2007 thesis on the Middle East policy from other scholars' work. Walsh claims it was an unintentional mistake due to it in part a post-traumatic stress disorder caused by his service in Iraq. While she was running for re-election, was appointed to the Senate after Max Baucus resigned to become U.S. ambassador to China.
Meanwhile, as the bodies of the crash victims aboard the Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 are being flown back to their native countries, the Malaysian Prime Minister says it will take much longer to bring home the bodies of Malaysian victims.
It is expected that this whole process will take weeks. It might even be months. We are not sure yet. But the people on the ground have informed me that it cannot be done before Raya.
And the Malaysian Prime Minister also said that he is angry that investigators still do not have full access to the crash site. So that continues, and of course, two different countries, actually multiple countries, but two different countries, mostly in the public eye these last few days, Holland and the Netherlands, and the way that they've dealt with the grieving process aspect of this. Of course, Malaysia, the Prime Minister there, has had to deal with this issue as well as the other still mystery of what happened to the missing Malaysia Airlines flight, Francesca. So, you know, yesterday we saw what was happening is taking place again today. The way these funerals and I guess the memorials are being handled in the Netherlands. I don't know if you got a chance to check out any of the footage of the coverage. The precision at which the coffins came off the airplane, the hearses through the city of Amsterdam, I believe today. I think it's in Eindhoven. But the unity you saw among the Dutch people was really striking.
It really was, and I think it's a testament to how these particular nations deal so well with such horrific incidents. And I think this week has been a really horrific week, especially on the news front, with all of these tragedies happening with airlines. I hope it doesn't put people off traveling, I do have to say, John, but it is a real travesty what we've had to deal with in terms of that this week.
And you mentioned earlier today in some of our news updates, we had this airline crash in Taiwan yesterday, I believe.
Yes.
Also one in Africa today in addition to this. And you know, one of the things, we saw the footage there, what was taking place in Holland yesterday, but one of the things that's also difficult for the nation of Malaysia here is because many of the folks who were on that flight who were from that country were Muslim, and in Muslim tradition you have to bury the dead before nightfall on the day that they die, and when that's not happened, obviously that causes problems religiously for what takes place next. So some of the many complications here, and you can understand the anger that continues to grow. Of course, everybody's sad initially at first, and then the anger sets in, and we're starting to see more on that. And this, as we look to Europe, and specifically maybe the Dutch, to step up their rhetoric towards Russia.
Absolutely. Let's hope that does happen, John.
Rhetoric, or specifically what they're going to say. We heard David Cameron with maybe some of the strongest language thus far.
Yes, absolutely. Cameron definitely took a strong stance, which I think came as a wake-up call to everyone. But very good politician and even better Prime Minister, I would say.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you see the relationship traditionally that exists between the United States and the UK, the special relationship, as it's called. Cameron even being stronger in his language than our own president.
I know, and that...
Stronger in his language than our own president.
I know, and that's somewhat worrying, obviously being British, but I do have to stress that definitely making an example, Cameron, that I hope that our president here takes a note of.
Yes, and you would hope folks like the French would step up a little bit too. There's some deals going on with military assets the French have pending with the Russians. A lot of folks are saying it's now time for Francois Hollande to step up and say, not going to happen, Mr. Vladimir Putin.
Equally so.
All right, so again, as we've heard from many others, Republicans and Democrats, there's a lot of onus on Europe right now to step up in the wake of the tragedy with that Malaysia Airlines crash and the shooting down of said plane. Much more to come here on America's Forum, and of course, always an opportunity to get your insight. What do you think about the different talking points being used by world leaders on this particular area of crisis? You can reach out to us on social media. Find us on Twitter at NewsmaxTV, hashtag America's Forum or at America's Forum. And you can reach out to us, special email address, connect@newsmax.com and facebook.com/@newsmax.com and facebook.com/NewsmaxTV.
What? At my age? No way. But then you hold him in your arms, and everything changes. This is my first grandchild, Stephen, and I want to be a part of his life for a long, long time. But you can't take care of your family until you take care of yourself.
And now with Fast 5 from Nutrisystem, you can lose weight fast. Lose 5 pounds your first week or your money back, guaranteed.
Nutrisystem helps me do just that. I lost 50 pounds. and I feel great.
Order your 28-day MyWay plan right now and we'll rush you the Fast 5 free. You'll get 1 week of fantastic energizing shakes to rev your metabolism, 1 week of delicious Craving Crusher shakes to crush those cravings, plus 1 week of meals absolutely free.
Grandma? Yeah, I can own that. I'm a grandma. Don't wait. Call Nutrisystem today.
Start losing weight today.
Call now, 877-316-SIZE and lose your first 5 pounds free.
Now everyone who uses catheters can get a better catheter with Liberator Medical's free catheter sample pack. These new catheters are better than ever, easier to use, more convenient, comfortable, virtually pain-free. Don't wait. Call now and get your free catheter sample pack. There's the all-new compact catheter for women, pre-lubricated, no drips, no mess, fits in your purse. The self-lubricated catheter, it lubricates itself in the package, comfortable, no mess. The closed system catheter, pre-lubricated with its own collection bag, proven to reduce UTIs. The discreet pocket catheter, curved to fit in your pocket to go anywhere. The polished eyelet catheter for micro-smooth comfort, reduces friction and pain. Call now. We'll also bill Medicare and your insurance for you. Call for your free catheter sample pack with free shipping. Call Liberator Medical.
Call 1-800-344-6777. That's 1-800-344-6777.
My name is Ed Berliner. I'm a host and a news anchor here at Newsmax. This country is desperate for a new voice to speak to that new generation that wants to know it all. Don't give me just half the story. Don't give me a piece of it. Let me get it all. Every single day, when people come to Newsmax, they're going to get an entire story. A new voice, a new generation. Newsmax TV.
Going back to Hinckley, Ohio, and the cost of health care continuing to climb. Healthcare spending expected to grow at an average rate of 5.8% over the decade-long period from 2012 to 2022. That's 1 percentage point faster than the expected average annual growth of our gross domestic product. Joining me now to break down the numbers with more impressive verbiage is the guy who makes sense of so many things for us in terms of healthcare, Newsmax Deputy Health Editor Nick Tate. Nick, it's good to have you back in studio today.
Good to be here, man.
And let's begin, not with numbers so much, but again with the aforementioned verbiage. A duel between 2 circuit courts of appeal dealing with Obamacare. Encapsulate those 2 different rulings and what you think is going to happen next.
Well, the appeals court and the D.C. district on Tuesday ruled that the subsidies that the federal government provides to defray these rising those 36 states that by some estimates range up to about 76%. So an enormous amount of money that we're already spending a lot for health care. In this country we spend twice as much as virtually any other country on the planet. But if those subsidies go away, which were to defray the cost of health care, we're going to see incredible hardship.
So again, if the Supreme Court is to go along with the D.C. Circuit, and we know there may be other steps in between. They may issue en banc decisions, get all 11 judges on each circuit together. But still, if that ruling comes out finally, that means exponentially higher costs.
Absolutely. The subsidies are, I would describe them as kind of, that stray thread on a sweater that you tug it and the whole garment becomes unraveled. And for millions of Americans, it would be an extraordinary new cost.
There are so many different acronyms around. So many different organizations, one being the NCPA. Now, we can begin with the acronym and then take a look at their new report on healthcare. Is this something that offers independent, sober analysis of what's happening?
You know, projections have really been all over the map, and almost every group that has projected healthcare spending costs over the next 10 years has had some political or some leaning in one direction or another. The place that I would look is where we're seeing the states already beginning to get the insurance numbers, the projections for premiums next year. So, for instance, in the state of Ohio, the Department of Insurance has received proposals from insurance companies for those individuals who buy their health insurance on the federal exchange, the Obamacare exchange in Ohio. They're projecting average increases in premiums next year of 13%. Now, that's something like 3 or 4 times the rate of wage growth. And I think that as goes Ohio, so goes much of the country. The larger projections in the other states are that we're going to see at least 10 to 15% increases in premiums next year. So the numbers that I would look at are not coming from the various think tanks and organizations, but the actual states where the insurance commissioners are getting those numbers right now. Now, they're not final. We won't have the final numbers until we get closer to November when the next open enrollment period begins. But the early preliminary numbers suggest we're going to be looking at double-digit increases in most of those 36 states where the federal government runs the exchanges.
This program got off to such an abysmal start. And we talked about a country of 300 million people. And it seemed in retrospect we were hearing, wow, maybe 8 million signed up for this. Do we have a handle yet on actually who is covered under Obamacare and others with their health care insurance intact or at least restored?
Well, we do know that there are, as you say, the 8 million who signed up through these new exchanges. But beyond that, the expectation is that because the law requires everyone to have insurance, the individual mandate, you must have it or you will pay a fine, somewhere between 90 and 95% of Americans over the next 10 years will have insurance. But the question is, what are we going to pay for it? You know, as I suggested, there's nothing in the law that holds down the cost of health care, and as the health care costs continue to rise, exponentially in some cases, there's also nothing in the law that prevents insurers from passing on the cost of those rising health care costs to individuals, to businesses, to families in terms of premiums. So, you know, the goal of the Affordable Care Act was to make sure that as many people as possible could be insured through Medicare, Medicaid, buying it on their own, or through their employment. But the second question, the second shoe to fall is, what are we getting for it? What are we paying for it? And is it something that is going to continue to be a huge hardship for many families that are struggling to just put food on the table and make ends meet?
Nick, in that response, to paraphrase, you said the law is silent on a couple of things involving this economic interchange between consumers or patients and health insurers. It can also be said, and it's back to verbiage, pardon me, verbiage as garbage. You had a 3,000-page bill, but a lot of that is boilerplate language to allow the regulators at HHS to step in with regulation. Now, you talked about 10 years for getting people signed up. How long is it going to take for people to understand the new fine print from the regulators at HHS?
Well, they haven't written many of the laws. I mean, something like 41 of the main provisions that were set to take effect since 2010 have either been delayed or they're behind schedule. So we don't really know even the simplest thing, like how are they going to enforce the individual mandate? Are they going to hold to the deadlines on the employer mandate that requires employers to provide health benefits or pay a fine? So it's enormously complex. And this is an area where I think a lot of Americans are confused anyway. Health insurance is not something that's very, very simple. So confusion, extra cost, questions about what you're getting for what you pay. There's a huge consumer story here. And my recommendation, I mean, part of the reason that we do what we do here is to let people know, here's what's coming your way, here's how to make the smartest decisions you can. That's more important now than perhaps ever before with health insurance. You need to be a savvy consumer.
So whether it's Wall Street or Main Street or your street, uncertainty in the marketplace is not a good thing. Nick Tate, as always, we appreciate your time and your insights.
My pleasure.
And of course, to find out more about this, you can go to healthradarnow.com to get a special offer on the Obamacare Survival Guide. You see it right there. Nick Tate had a very active hand in putting that together. For that, we congratulate him, and we tell you that's a good source dealing with these uncertain times. Your thoughts on Obamacare? Is it just what the doctor ordered? Tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, #AmericasForum.
This is a national healthcare alert from the Health Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one suffers from knee pain and have Medicare as your primary insurance, we've got great news. You could qualify for a pain-relieving knee brace at little or no cost to you. Get free delivery, and all the paperwork is handled by our accredited suppliers at no charge to you. If you are on Medicare and have knee pain, don't wait. You may qualify to immediately receive a pain-relieving brace at little or no cost. Call the Health Hotline right now for details toll-free at 877-530-9847. Friendly agents are standing by 24/7 to help you. We also have other pain-relieving braces available for shoulder, ankle, and your back. You may be eligible to receive these items and more at little or no cost to you as well. Call right now for details toll-free at 877-530-9847. Please remember this number, 877-530-9847. Our friendly representatives are standing by now to take your call. Please call us right now at 877-530-9847.
Looking for a home loan? Welcome to PennyMac, one of America's leading mortgage lenders, where all we do are home loans. PennyMac offers a neighborhood of home loan options. First-time buyers? Call PennyMac for some low down payment options as low as 3.5%. Looking for an FHA loan, jumbo loan, VA loan, or conventional loan? Call PennyMac. Want to refinance to save money? Yup, call PennyMac. Finance to save money? Yup, call PennyMac. Home underwater? PennyMac offers a government-sponsored. So if you're thinking home loans, PennyMac leads the pack with low rates week in and week out, so you know you're going to save money and get a fast closing. So call PennyMac now. We're probably helping some of your neighbors with their loans, and we're ready to help you too. Call the experts in home loans in the next 10 minutes to get a free $50 Home Depot gift card. Call 800-424-1956, 800-424-1956, 800-424-1956.
Summer's here, and now's the best time to get clear skin. That's why the amazing Proactive Plus has a totally new offer like never before. Order the faster, more effective Proactive Plus today. Get free shipping and 2 of our hottest customer favorites, worth $37 free. Our deep cleansing body wash, plus our best-selling dark spot corrector. It's your summer glow duo for sexy, summer-ready skin all over.
The body wash is amazing. Now I can wear tank tops. I can wear bathing suits. I just feel free now, like I can wear whatever I want.
And if you're dealing with dark marks, age spots, or even sun damage, you're going to love the Dark Spot Corrector.
Since using the Dark Spot Corrector, the dark spots that I'd had from acne, it's like going away. My skin looks amazing.
I would just put it wherever there was a blemish, and before I knew it, they faded.
You'll be astonished how quickly Proactive Plus can fix your skin. In fact, it clears blemishes 4 times faster than the leading topical prescription. And nourishing ingredients give your skin extra care.
And now that my skin's clear, I feel so sexy, so confident. It makes me want to show off how good my skin looks.
Acne medicine and skincare products can cost you hundreds. But call now and get Proactive Plus for only $39.95. And you get our amazing body wash, plus the incredible dark spot corrector, both free. Still not sure? Then we'll make this offer irresistible. Act fast and we'll knock $10 off, just $29.95. And shipping is free.
Give it a try. Don't settle with being unhappy with your skin. Proactive Plus works.
Get all this, a $109 value for just $29.95. And if your skin isn't absolutely gorgeous, we'll send your money back, guaranteed. But call before this offer sells out. Call 1-800-397-8177. That's 1-800-397-8177.
Back with our friend Francesca Page and with you here on America's Forum, because it's your turn. You write in via social media on various stories in the news, and we're happy to air your comments. The first story we're going to talk about, the ongoing VA healthcare scandal.
This first comment coming from Ready or Not. I cannot imagine how many years it will take to root out the corruption this administration has installed, fostered, and condemned.
Air Force Master Sergeant says this: Obama wants $3.7 billion to help care for people who flagrantly break our laws, but he hasn't done a thing to ensure our war heroes get wheelchairs. This should make every American's blood boil.
And the next one here, coming from Cajun Text, appears that they are not taking any chances this time. They will get rid of all information and give everyone at the IRS a clean slate.
We should point out this is switching to the whole notion of the IRS scandal. And let's get the final word on this from Think About It. As a senior technologies engineer and computer scientist, I've always said such mass destruction to more than 6 drives at or about the same period of time is not real. Hard drives today are of high quality. The word crash is very questionable. Hardware crash? Not likely. Malicious viral crash? Possibly. Love that name. Think about it. So we'll get, and of course we're getting word now that the IRS just now believes those missing emails from Lois Lerner, they may in fact have them. Of course, it took a judge getting involved there in the courthouse. So we'll continue to keep our eye on that. Now we need to talk about health care. Something I need to keep in mind is I'm trying desperately to get my voice back, and I was given some instruction about my diet. Same thing applies to virtually every aspect of our heart health. Dr. Chauncey Crandall comes up now to talk about our diet and cholesterol. Here's today's Heart Health Minute.
If you have high cholesterol, you probably think that taking a statin drug is the best way to lower it. After all, why wouldn't you? Statins are among the most prescribed drugs in the world. But although they are great medications to those who truly need them, other people can lower their cholesterol just by adding certain foods to their diet. Here are the 3 cholesterol-lowering foods that you'll find at your supermarket. Number 1 is oatmeal. Oatmeal is a potent cholesterol-lowering food because oats are a soluble fiber. This means that they absorb the excess cholesterol in your digestive system and carry it out of your body. In addition, oatmeal also helps prevent diabetes and cancer as well. In fact, research shows that eating oatmeal on a regular basis can be as effective as taking a statin. Second, choose salmon over beef and you'll be replacing a food packed with cholesterol-raising saturated fat with one rich in monounsaturated fat. This is the type of good fat that makes salmon taste fattening, but it's not. Salmon is also packed with omega-3 fatty acids, which lower triglycerides, another dangerous blood fat. Third, if it's mid-afternoon and you're craving a snack, grab a handful of almonds. Eating almonds every day lowers your bad LDL cholesterol by about 9%. Almonds are also packed with other vitamins as well, but the best thing about almonds is that they don't taste like a health food. Almonds contain no cholesterol and are also packed with healthy monounsaturated oils. Since most of you are already reading my book, The Simple Heart Cure, I want you to go to chapter 11, in which I tell you about foods that can help you lower your cholesterol. I'm Dr. Chauncey Crandall, and thanks for watching this Health Minute. I'll see you next time.
Get your copy of Dr. Crandall's best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure, for just $4.95 with his special offer. Go to www.simpleheartbook.com to get your copy today. That's simpleheartbook.com.
Meet Mary. She loves to shop online with her debit card. And so does Bill, an identity thief who stole Mary's identity, took over her bank accounts, and stole her hard-earned money. Unfortunately, millions of Americans just like you learn all it may take is a little misplaced information to wreak havoc on your life. This is identity theft, and no one helps stop it better than LifeLock. LifeLock offers the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If Mary had LifeLock's bank account alerts, she may have been notified before it was too late. LifeLock's credit notification service is on the job 24/7. As soon as they detect a threat to your identity within their network, they will alert you, protecting you before the damage is done. LifeLock has the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. guarding your social security number, your money, your credit, even the equity in your home.
My years as a prosecutor taught me that we all need to protect ourselves from crime. In today's world, that includes identity theft. It's a serious problem. We all have to protect ourselves.
While identity theft can't be completely stopped, no one works harder to protect you than LifeLock. You even get a $1 million service guarantee. That's security no one can beat. You have so much to protect and nothing to lose. When you call LifeLock right now and get 60 days of identity theft protection risk-free. That's right, 60 days risk-free. Use promo code NOTME. Order now and get this document shredder to keep sensitive documents out of the wrong hands. A $29 value, free. Don't wait until you become the next victim. Call 1-800-918-3128 for 60 days of LifeLock identity theft protection risk-free and get a document shredder free. Use promo code NOTME. Call 1-800-918-3128 now.
You may be watching us on DirecTV's Channel 349, Channel 223 on Dish, or maybe on your computer, the website NewsmaxTV.com with our webcast. However you're watching us, we're mighty pleased you're here. The Voice is coming back. It really is. J.D. Hayworth with John Bogman. And John, later this hour, a really curious story as someone goes undercover with Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, this one makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, to say the least, when you take a look at that. Look forward to that discussion, and we'll break that one down a little bit. Also going to look forward to our discussion we're going to have, so save your voice. We got to talk about that interview you did with Marco Rubio, and an interview he did more than a year ago on the topic of immigration. We'll do a little compare and contrast. We'll talk about Rubio in this Newsmax Now update, as well as many other stories, so let's get started. Well, meantime, concern and anger continue to spike over the flow of illegal children and illegal immigrants as a whole across the nation's border. Republicans have put increasing pressure and blame on President Obama. Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio had this to say here on America's Forum earlier today about the bipartisan Gang of Eight immigration bill he supported and what happened to it.
The mistake was the one I kept pointing to throughout that process, and that is that it didn't go far enough on the security elements. And I warned about that repeatedly, and every time I did, I was accused of trying to get out of the effort or undermine the effort. And those who followed it recall me saying on a number of occasions, this is not going to pass in the House if we don't do more on the enforcement elements.
We'll take a closer look at that. And as for the crisis in Russia and Ukraine, this is what Rubio had to say about Russia's involvement or alleged involvement with the downed Malaysia airline flight.
Certainly should have been more forceful in the initial stages and called it for what it is. Now, since then, I think the White House has become more aggressive about its point. And what I think would be helpful now is to declassify as much of the evidence as possible, to show it to the world, so the world can see how Russia has a direct role to play in the murder of almost 300 innocent people that were on that Malaysian airliner.
Rubio also said he's fairly confident that there is some direct involvement between Russia and what happened in Ukraine. Meantime, Australian and Dutch diplomats joined to promote a plan for a UN team to secure the crash flight scene, which has been controlled by those pro-Russian rebels. Australia's foreign minister and her Dutch counterpart met with Ukraine's foreign minister. They addressed the media and they said they had an agreement now, and that's been reached. And now the top priority is to ensure, quote, full access to the crash site, the transparent and effective investigation as well, and of course to recover all the possible remnants. An airport official has confirmed that the wreckage from an Air Algérie flight has been located in neighboring Mali. The plane carrying 116 people disappeared from radar early on Thursday over northern Mali in bad weather. Nearly half of the passengers were French. Air Navigation Services lost track of the aircraft about 50 minutes after takeoff. The plane had been missing for hours. The news was made public early this morning, of course, and it was not immediately clear why the airline or government officials did not make that announcement public much sooner.
Let's continue to talk about the perhaps unfriendly skies, John, as we continue to follow the situation in Israel And as we've reported throughout the program, our Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, has lifted its ban on flights into Tel Aviv. Joining us now, David Fuskes, CEO of Xenophon Strategies. I hope I said that right, David. 2 days in a row, we welcome you back to America's Forum. Thanks so much for your time.
Happy to be here, JD.
Well, David, the FAA says it decided to lift the restrictions. Aviation. David, is it in fact as the FAA says it is, or is there another story behind that statement?
It's perfectly safe to fly into Israel. I think that the FAA made a mistake, an understandable mistake, when they put the ban on. They were very skittish because of the downing of the aircraft in the Ukraine. A missile came close to the airport in Israel, and they put the ban on. And why that isn't something that should be concerning to aviation safety is because the Iron Dome system that the Israelis have tracks every one of these missiles, which are not surface-to-air missiles. They made the decision that this was going to fall basically in a field, not injure property or injure people, so that they let it fall in, which is their policy. So the optics of doing that when it was a mile from the airport were pretty bad, no question about it, but it wasn't really a safety issue. And I think the FAA just had to be convinced that, and to get more information on just the security the security systems that the Israelis have in place.
Well, David, that's what the official line from the FAA, JD just mentioned that, but also overseas, Air France, Air Berlin, and Lufthansa extending flight cancellations, quote, until further notice. Lufthansa said it extended those cancellations because, quote, at the current time, there's no sufficiently reliable new information that would justify a resumption of air operations. So we hear this from the Europeans as well. What's your take on their line?
I think that all airlines are skittish now about areas of conflict, that's going to get some more attention about overflights of areas of conflict. And so I think that they're all taking a look at it, making their own decisions, and some are being more conservative than others. But I can tell you, with my almost 30 years of experience in aviation with aviation security, I'm convinced that it's safe to fly into Israel.
And David, as you mentioned that, can you update us on domestic airlines? Delta had suspended service, also U.S. Airways, and another carrier that escapes my memory right now. Do you expect these American airlines to fly back into Tel Aviv based on the lifting of the ban?
Well, every airline is going to make its own decision on this, on whether or not to fly back into Tel Aviv, to fly back to Israel. My guess is that within a matter of a day or 2 days that they'll start their flights back up. It's just a guess, but that's what I think they'll do.
And for the record, we should point out, as my partner very capably did to me with a note, United Airlines, the third American carrier that had suspended operations into Ben Gurion Airport there in Tel Aviv. David, a couple of other stories this morning that perhaps we need to emphasize just how important weather is in flight. Two stories from two different places on the globe. One from Africa, that Air Algeria flight. They're disappearing, or at least we didn't get a straight answer apparently for a long time. As you look at this situation, is this bureaucratic clumsiness, a reluctance on the airport, on the airline and the nation to come forward with this, or given the fact that that transpired in Africa where there's a lot of political unrest, could there be something more to this story?
Well, we won't know for some time yet. Certainly, information wasn't as forthcoming and quickly as it needed to be. But weather in the area, could very well be a contributing factor to this. But I think it brings up the whole issue also of conflict zones and overflights of conflict zones. So So with all of Mali, there is an FAA, there is with overflights of Libya because of an ongoing civil war in the north of the country. Now, I'm not suggesting that anything happened from this conflict down this aircraft. From all reports, those type of sophisticated weapons aren't in the hands of the rebels or the government there. But it does bring up the issue of overflights across conflict zones.
Well, David, you look at this, and of course, because of what's happening in the news today, it's maybe the first thing that folks think of, especially when you hear about a plane missing over a nation like Bali or a region like North Africa, where we've had a lot of conflict. But also at the same time, an interesting subplot to all this is we're seeing some economic numbers coming out from some of the airline and also airplane manufacturers. There was a recent air show in the UK. Orders for these planes were up. Some of the initial earnings reports from airlines like Delta are up as well. Seems like a good time for air flight, but do you see any long-term impacts from some of these recent air tragedies? We know this stuff has happened before, but it does seem a little different this time around.
If you look at the overall safety record of commercial air flight, especially when you get into the western regions with the United States or Europe, it is so safe to fly that people really, even if there's a small drop-off, will come back very, very quickly. I don't anticipate that there's going to be any significant impact on the business of air travel from any of these accidents.
Well, we have accidents, and then again we have the situation last week in the Ukraine, and there's no way to quantify the loss of life in terms of the value and the promise of the people on board that downed Malaysian jetliner. But the future of Malaysian Airlines, given the, quote, disappearance of the plane in down under, if you will, or we're still trying to track that, and now the shooting down over Ukraine, what happens to that airline specifically in terms of its economic well-being? Can it be sustained? Does it require the government to underwrite the air carrier even more? What do you foresee financially for Malaysian Airlines?
I think Malaysian Air is in a very, very tough position. They so badly bungled the communications and the handling of the first accident that it has really tarnished their brand, tarnished their image, and people have lost faith in the company. It reminds me of what happened in the late 90s. If you'll recall, a plane from ValueJet Airline went down in the Florida Everglades. The company did a very poor job in communicating on that. They're widely seen as bungling the response to the accident. They later had to change their name. They later became AirTran and had to change their name and get rid of the brand entirely. So I think it's going to be a very tough road for Malaysian Air.
Yeah, two of those tragedies happening in less than 5 months, and of course there will be impacts there on Malaysia Airlines as well. We also talked about something else here earlier, the Taiwanese crash that happened yesterday.
Sure.
Also the result of bad weather. What was interesting about that story is there were reports that the pilot had tried to fly around that bad weather and still tried to land. We know these planes can handle bad weather, but when you look at that assessment of what took place there, it seems as if that plane should not have been trying to attempt to land anyway.
Well, we'll find out exactly when we get the information back from the black boxes, the flight data recorder. We'll get all the information we need to figure that out. But I think an interesting thing about the accident is they were flying an ATR turboprop aircraft, which our turboprops handle bad weather very well. They're typically used to go into more difficult terrain. They need a slower landing speed, shorter runways to land. And that's also a plane with a very good safety record. So we're going to have to see what comes out about this, but certainly weather seems to be a contributing factor at a minimum.
David, a couple of minutes remain. Want to go back to what happened in the Ukraine. Earlier in this program, we interviewed Senator Marco Rubio, who has a seat on the Senate Select Committee. On Intelligence. He said, for all intents, between the Russians and the shooting down of the Malaysian jetliner. Now, the official line from Washington, from our intelligence community as of yesterday, was there was, quote, no direct link. You've been in Washington a long time. You've dealt with these issues. What is your take on what transpired with the Malaysian shoot down?
I think that the intelligence community and the government is being conservative on this. Let's call this for what it is. Everybody knows that Russia was involved, that those were the sophisticated weapon systems came from Russia. And either if they weren't involved in it directly, they were responsible for it by supplying those missile systems to the rebels. You know, this crash is particularly tragic because usually from an aviation accident, what we learn is we'll learn things that will help improve aviation safety. But this was just outright murder, and everybody knows that. Everybody in Washington knows that. Everybody, all of your viewers know it. It was outright murder, and Russia was involved.
David Fuskes, from your days on Capitol Hill when you were communications director for the House Transportation Committee to your new role as CEO of Xenophon Strategies, we appreciate your insights, your experience, and your analysis of what is transpiring in commercial aviation and your uncommercial aviation and your unvarnished comments today. Thanks very much, Fuskes. And he had some things to say. Now, you're going to want to stay with us, something we touched on earlier. Coming up, you'll never guess what Planned Parenthood is telling teenage girls in terms of sexual experimentation. On Capitol Hill, we talk about a whip. That's a position. They're talking about a whole different kind of whip.
Can you really lose weight without changing your lifestyle? LaToya Q did. In fact, in just 5 months, she lost nearly 2 pounds a week without changing the way she dieted or exercised.
I lost 36 pounds and I went down 4 dress sizes.
Like so many people, LaToya didn't want to change her lifestyle to lose weight. Instead, she decided to take America's #1 selling diet pill, Lipozene.
People kept asking me, you have to be exercising. You're really you just don't want to tell us what you're doing. I was like, no, I don't have time to go to a gym. I just took Lipozene and I started seeing results immediately.
Lipozene has now sold over 20 million bottles. That's because Lipozene really works. And to prove it, we conducted our very own double-blind clinical study where all we asked people to do was take Lipozene. And by just taking Lipozene, they lost weight. But here's where it gets really exciting. These people were not asked to change their diet or exercise. And 78% of the weight they lost was pure body fat. Not water, fat.
I'm almost back down to my high school weight, so I'm really loving that.
And for even faster results, you can try Lipozene with moderate diet and exercise.
Feels great to have a six-pack. I didn't think I would have it at my age.
I lost 7 inches off of my waist and I lost 2 dress sizes and I feel amazing.
Now you can join the millions of people who have lost weight with Lipozene by trying it risk-free for only $29.95. Lipozene is guaranteed to help you lose weight or your money back.
Lipozene, it works.
But wait. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll double your order absolutely free. Plus, we'll even pay for your shipping. But that's still not all. To celebrate selling over 20 million bottles of Lipozene, the company will give you a free bottle of Metabo Up with your order. That's a $20 value free. But you must call right now because this exclusive free offer is not available in stores.
Call 1-800-509-9436. That's 1-800-509-9436.
Hey, Hard, what's this? That's my resignation. You're resigning? Why? You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. Oh, I forgot. I'll do better. Please don't quit on me.
Don't let your heart quit on you. Get your uncontrolled high blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late.
Like what kind of stuff could?
The same thing they do to you. You can gag them with them. I mean,
Oh, really?
completely what they're comfortable with. Again,
Okay.
you both have to be comfortable with it.
Right.
Some guys are like, oh no, you're not doing that to me. Some guys love it. They want you to walk them around on a leash, pretend they're a dog or
Okay.
a horse. There's some cool stuff out there that's really interesting.
The clip we just saw, which many I think could fairly call disturbing, shows a Planned Parenthood staffer giving her version of sex education to an underage girl. The just released footage, part of an ongoing series by the group Live Action. Back with me on set, we have Francesca Page and John Bachman, and joining us via Skype, Lila Rose, president of Live Action, here to discuss her group's latest video. Lila, we thank you for joining us here on America's Forum.
Thanks for having me on.
Lila, you responded to your take on these videos says in part, quote, "This is not sex education, but rather a disturbing and dangerous ideology consciously being pushed on our nation's youth. Can you expand upon this? And what type of ideology are you referencing?
Of course. So these undercover tapes, there's 4 of them now showing Planned Parenthood sex counseling that's tax funded, websites, sex shops, and most disturbingly, violent sadomasochistic sexual activity. So whipping, asphyxiation, choking, cutting, very disturbing for anybody who cares about the well-being of kids. But it's not just what we find in the clinics. And when we talk about an ideology where Planned Parenthood is putting kids at risk, we're talking about a whole across the board website programming, videos that they have on their YouTube channels, programs and workshops that they have set up to teach educators to then educate teens, promoting BDSM or bondage and domination sadomasochism. So there's that aspect of it. And this was all based on an Alfred Kinsian sexology, who was basically a grandfather of sexology for Planned Parenthood, who believes many very disturbing things. Adult-child sexual relationships aren't a problem, who thinks that children are sexual from birth and should have sexual experiences.
Well, Lila, we also want to focus a little bit more about some specific clips from the video we played at the onset of this interview. We'll play those and we'll talk a little bit more about the situation on the backside. Take a listen.
You have, this time to explore. You're lucky to be so young and have a relationship with a partner that you trust. That's rare. So, take advantage of that. Because you're 15, we do have a program until the age of 18. It's called Project Prevention. Basically, it helps young men and women get access to birth control and STD testing.
There's some other parts of the conversation, Lila, and there's some folks could say it wasn't all bad here, and also there's some concerns about the act of sending in a 15-year-old into these types of clinics and posing as this type of situation. Some folks could classify that as maybe an entrapment type situation.
Sure. Well, a couple things. First of all, we use investigators who are adults. We never use minors for these projects. That would be irresponsible. They're posing as minors. Second of all, I'm not sure which clip you chose to play, but everyone who's listening needs to watch the footage themselves, because when you sit down and you see Planned Parenthood interacting, these workers who are tax funded, interacting with who they think are minor girls and recommending sex shops, porn websites, and most disturbingly, this violent sexual activity with partners, that's where I think everybody can agree, no matter what their positions are, politically or even different agreements about social issues, that this is irresponsible and outright dangerous for teens. And it's not just what we find in the clinics undercover, like I was saying before. Go to our website and you can see all the ways we've documented Planned Parenthood's many times public programming geared towards young people that promotes BDSM, that promotes things that all parents I think would be very disturbed and troubled by, and health professionals have no business pushing on teens. And that's the real issue here.
Lila, you take issue with the fact that half of Planned Parenthood's budget comes from taxpayers and that some funding in Obamacare goes towards sex counseling to Planned Parenthood. Absolutely. Is there an alternate type of sex education that you specifically would support funding for?
Sure, it's a good question. So there's 2 things. First of all, to clarify, Planned Parenthood is receiving over $500 million, but it's not just for sex education. It's funding their clinics, their facilities to be open, their staff to be there, and as well as claiming to be the leading sex educator of our kids in our country. Planned Parenthood is also the biggest abortion chain. Not a lot of people realize this. They commit over 320,000 abortions every year, killing over 320,000 unborn children. So we have to keep that in perspective, because when we're talking about tax funding, the vast majority of Americans are absolutely opposed to funding the biggest abortion chain. So that's a key part of this. When it comes to teen sex education, I think it's all about the family and the community. Teens are individuals and unique, and they have unique challenges and issues. It's not a one-size-fits-all. I think that the more we can make the community involved, get parents involved, get families involved, the stronger it will be when we educate our kids, not just when it comes to issues of sexuality, but issues across the board. So when we trust a national and even an international organization that's also the biggest abortion chain to be the purveyor and the distributor of sex education at a top-down level, and they have this dangerous sexology that's very destructive and against the health and well-being of our kids, and they're the ones we trust, we're going to have problems, and that's what we're seeing.
Lila, as you know, politics is predicated upon public policy. And other stories dealing with what some would call, quote, reproductive rights continue to come into the news. And we haven't had a chance to talk with you, for example, in the wake of the Hobby Lobby decision. We have seen politically the resurrection of the so-called war on women, those on the left, and indeed Democrat Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid trying to push legislation he's saying will somehow protect women. Your take on the so-called war on women that the left continues to reference and employ politically?
Yes, it's a good question. The war on women, I think there is a war on women, but it's not the way that some in the far left media and then, of course, far left politicians seem to frame the issue. And quite frankly, I think they're largely out of touch. As women, our first consideration is not whether or not we can pop some hormonal birth control pills, but they're questions about our relationships, our jobs, our education, our families, foreign policy, taxes. These are the things that women are interested in. And when we've been really limited to the question of regulating our fertility, and that's all of a sudden the government's job and keen interest in our bodies, I feel like that is completely out of touch with what most women actually care about and the lives that we're living. So if there's a war on women, I would say it's a war that's really very condescending. And then also there's the war on seeing women, limiting them to our regulating our fertility and limiting them to questions about abortion, saying that somehow abortion is empowering to us and we want abortion. No woman wants an abortion. And I think that that's really the war on women when it's being turned completely upside down. And I think those politicians are out of touch, and I think elections will start to show that.
And of course, Lila, when this debate happens, there are always those folks who step in here and say that not all women take birth control to prevent pregnancies. Some women need that for their health. And then the argument then gets turned around, and you mentioned the reverse war on women, or however you want to classify it. And there are also folks who are saying this issue should not come up again, and it's particularly one that politicians should avoid because it's caused problems in the past. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think that it's all about messaging, because the truth, you can have the truth, but if you don't communicate it, it doesn't matter. And when it comes to the issue of, hormonal birth control, first of all, there's no conversation, as there should be, about the many risks and problems with birth control, with hormonal contraception. And that's something that we're just pretending like, oh, women are going to be great if you just pump them full of hormonal contraceptives. That usually
That's not what everybody is saying, but there are legitimate doctors out there who say that these drugs have uses aside from, preventing pregnancy.
And I believe that medicine, you need to really go deep. And when it comes to treating symptoms, you have to really look at the core problems. I mean, that's a whole other discussion that I think is important. I really encourage as women, when I talk with friends and everything, to really look at, are we treating symptoms here, or what is the core problem when it comes to that? But that's not the issue here. The issue here is that there's been a whole trumped up charge made by an elite group of politicians, backed up by powerful media interests, and I believe powerful pharmaceutical interests, to make a mountain out of a molehill and then to turn this around on women. So now women, when it comes to political discussion, it's all about fertility and hormone drugs, as opposed to about our education, our jobs, our families, foreign policy, things that we really care about. And I think that's completely unfair and outright shameful that we're being treated that way in political discourse. And that's what I think needs to change.
I agree with you on some aspects, but there's also a lot of women voters who say those same things, not those groups necessarily who you just mentioned.
About a minute left. Last question.
Question your statistics.
Francesca.
Leila, just very quickly, taking a couple steps back to that video. With the media and the current way that sexuality is dealt with in the media, what effect do you think that's having on young people making decisions when it comes to their sexuality and the decisions that they're making?
Yeah, and that's a part of the problem here. It's not what happens at Planned Parenthood is not happening in a bubble. They're part of a larger problem, which sees, again, violent sexual activity as somehow sexy or fun. And that's part of the problem here when it comes to teens. I mean, you have Rihanna singing the song Sadomasochism, or called S&M, and then she's being beat by Chris Brown. You have Robin Thicke in Blurred Lines, and in his song, he's talking about how, shouldn't even...
And we're going to have to leave it there, Lila. We appreciate your time. Look forward to visiting with you again very soon. And America's Forum will continue following this time out.
Meet Mary. She loves to shop online with her debit card. And so does Bill, an identity thief who stole Mary's identity, took over her bank accounts, and stole her hard-earned money. Unfortunately, millions of Americans just like you learn all it may take is a little misplaced information to wreak havoc on your life. This is identity theft, and no one helps stop it better than LifeLock. LifeLock offers the most comprehensive identity theft protection available. If Mary had LifeLock's bank account alerts, she may have been notified before it was too late. LifeLock's credit notification service is on the job 24/7. As soon as they detect a threat to your identity within their network, they will alert you, protecting you before the damage is done. LifeLock has the most comprehensive identity theft protection available, guarding your social security number, your money, your credit, even the equity in your home.
My years as a prosecutor taught me that we all need to protect ourselves from crime. In today's world, that includes identity theft. It's a serious problem. We all have to protect ourselves.
While identity theft can't be completely stopped, no one works harder to protect you than LifeLock. You even get a $1 million service guarantee. That's security no one can beat. You have so much to protect and nothing to lose. When you call LifeLock right now and get 60 days of identity theft protection risk-free. That's right, 60 days risk-free. Use promo code NOTME. Order now and get this document shredder to keep sensitive documents out of the wrong hands. A $29 value, free. Don't wait until you become the next victim. Call 1-800-918-3128 for 60 days of LifeLock identity theft protection risk-free and get a document shredder free. Use promo code NOTME. Call 1-800-918-3128 now.
Pat Boone here with a word about bank safety. Do you think your money is safe in the bank? Don't bank on it. A generation ago, bank accounts felt secure and they paid interest. This encouraged the virtue of thrift and saving. But today, bank accounts pay virtually nothing, and they've shifted from low risk to high risk. For example, did you know your money deposited in most U.S. banks could be subject to limited withdrawal and even confiscation? Oh yes, and that's just the first of 19 risks explained in a new white paper entitled Don't Bank on It. You still think your bank deposits are safe? You better get this vital new Don't Bank on It white paper now. Call the number on the screen or visit SwissAmerica.com, the gold standard. Learn how simple it is to become your own banker today.
Backed by the resources of Newsmax.com. This is Newsmax TV and America's Forum, alongside John Bachman, J.D. Hayworth here, and voice is almost holding up through the
we had to
Baltimore
keep you
program.
around because I wanted to go back with you, double back, and take another closer look at the Rubio interview. Some interesting stuff out of that. Going to be up on Newsmax.com for folks to take a closer look as well. But also, J.D., couple quick notes before we get to that. Announcement today coming, the AP confirming the United States is pulling Peace Corps volunteers out of Kenya now. We've talked about the ongoing violence in that African nation as well. Also, big news coming right now. Arseniy Yatsenyuk, the current prime minister of the Ukraine, announcing his resignation. So the turmoil and chaos continues over in that part of Eastern Europe as well. But we turn our attention to the immigration crisis, still very much a hot topic, hot button issue here in the United States and here on America's Forum. Lawmakers are divided as tens of thousands of undocumented illegal children continue to cross the U.S.-Mexico border. Senator Rubio saying most of the GOP, including he, are focused right now on making border security the main priority.
What we really need to also do is improve our security mechanisms and repeal the laws that are creating this problem, particularly the law that passed back in 2008. And if you don't do that, then you're going to have this problem ongoing, and you're going to have this problem all over again.
Well, that's a fair enough argument right there, and something that most folks could agree on. But we also wanted to do a little compare and contrast here to some of Rubio's past comments. Here is Rubio all the way back in 2013, sitting down for beers with one of our favorite sites, BuzzFeed.
It's kind of a debate that I had in my own mind before we even engaged in this process is, on the one hand, you want people to come forward as quickly as possible. You want to open and close that door as quickly as possible, identify the folks that are here now, and lock that in. And that's the reason why I felt like maybe the better approach was to create the legalization first and then continue on with the insecurity process.
Well, J.D. Rubio did say maybe, but he also said his thoughts initially were to focus on the legalization efforts of the folks currently here illegally first. What's your take?
Well, it's not so much evolution as it is revision. And understand, politically, I've talked about the House of Representatives and the Senate for that matter. When you get up to speak, you ask unanimous consent to revise and extend your remarks. And essentially, what we've gotten from Senator Rubio is some revising of history. He told me in that recorded interview that where the mistake was with the Gang of Eight bill was not to move forward on enforcement. And then he subsequently said, and I insisted along the way that enforcement be a major component. Well, either he was wrestling with that concept in his mind to be very charitable, or in front of the BuzzFeed folks, he had a very different take, that you could move first with letting people in and follow with enforcement. What he has discovered is what the American people have been consistently saying, which is enforcement first. It's why I wrote the bill, the Enforcement First Act of 2006. And sadly, to again show this is a bipartisan problem, I invited President George W. Bush to get behind my legislation. He refused, saying instead that his approach was, quote, comprehensive immigration reform, which most Americans regard as amnesty.
And JD, as we look at this, of course, Florida, Rubio's home state, is there going to be a potential GOP candidate emerging for 2016 out of Florida? So new poll numbers coming out today from Quinnipiac showing that both Rubio and former Florida Governor Jeb Bush trailing Hillary Clinton by a pretty wide margin in head-to-head matchups right now. Here you see the breakdown. Hillary Clinton coming in anywhere between high 40s and low 50s compared to these numbers we hear on the screen. Governor Jeb Bush, 21%. Actually beating Marco Rubio. And interesting to note, considering Jeb Bush wrote that op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal, embracing illegal immigration as an act of love, Bush out with another op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal today. Clearly he is focused on the issue of immigration, but is he really going to run? What do you think?
Well, again, what we're getting here, and this is the comment from this new article coming out, the op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. In recent months, tens of thousands of young Central American refugees have illegally poured across the U.S.-Mexico border. It's the latest consequence of the failure of President Obama and Congress to overhaul America's broken immigration system. John, again, what is happening here is not only revision but extension of remarks. Jeb Bush has to get away from that infamous soundbite that illegal immigration is an act of love. That's what he's doing politically with the latest piece in the Wall Street Journal.
And maybe an indication that he is interested in running for president after all. So we can have a much longer discussion about that. But first, we're going to check in with Ed Berliner, who's due up here next on Newsmax TV. Ed joining us live from the Newsmax newsroom. Ed, great to see you.
Good to see you guys again. JD, come on, man. Get better quick.
I'm working hard, pal. I've got the tea and the honey behind me here.
See, that's what they don't know about us. We all have that little honey stash, you know,
that's right.
all the time
the
on the newsroom floor. Absolutely. Hey, we got a big show coming up right here. The resurgence of Rick Perry, with a lot of critics talking about him using the border crisis to his own advantage right now. Certainly the eyeglasses didn't hurt whatsoever. Elon Carr is a California House candidate who certainly will add a little bit more to the debate about Israel now and what we're talking about with the UN looking at potential war crimes on both sides. Syndicated talker Jerry Doyle is going to be here as well in our Around the Dial segment. Dr. David Wormser, he was in the Bush administration, also worked with Dick Cheney. Also, a little bit later on, we are going to talk about Ted Cruz, and we're going to bring an old movie to bear in this one, JD. Cool Hand Luke with a great line where you'll remember Strother Martin said, "What we have here is failure to communicate."
Now, I thought it was a little more like, what we have here is a failure to communicate.
It's pretty close to that. We are going to use Strother Martin, Cool Hand Luke, and talk to Mr. Cruz, if you will, about some of the things that he has said recently. That's all coming up at midpoint right here at noon Eastern Time.
And then we're all going to have a hard-boiled egg eating contest.
My money's on you, brother. You're the thin guy in the group, man. You can put them away easy.
That's what they say.
Ed Berliner, thanks. We're looking forward to midpoint showing up here on Newsmax TV at high noon. Thank you, sir.
See you then, guys.
Yes, indeed. And, of course, following midpoint, it'll be Steve Malzberg at 3 Eastern. Programming notes, we call them. Oh, some other notes you need to keep in mind. America's Forum continues following this time out.
Smile. No matter how well you provide for your family today, if you don't have life insurance, their future may be at risk. Think about what would happen if you were gone. Would they struggle to pay the bills and face an uncertain future? They don't have to. You can help guarantee those you love $200,000, $500,000, $750,000 or more with life insurance through AIG Direct. We'll help you get more for your money, up to 70% more. Just look, less than $14 a month buys a 40-year-old man a $250,000 term life policy. That's up to 3 times what you can get from other companies for the same price. No wonder millions of people rely on AIG companies. The call is free, the quote is free, and there's no obligation. Make the future more secure for those you love. Call now so you can sleep better at night.
For a free quote, call 1-800-558-5246 or visit AIGdirect.com.
Are you ready to take it all off this summer? I took it all off, and I'm glad I did. 35 pounds gone. If you said that I could get in a bathing suit again, I'd say you're crazy. But I did it.
There's still time to look hot and feel great this summer. And now, lose your first 5 pounds fast with a Fast 5 from Nutrisystem.
I've lost 40.5 pounds on Nutrisystem, and I feel fabulous.
You'll lose 5 pounds your first week or your money back, guaranteed.
I'm Erin, and I lost 30 pounds.
Order your 28-day My Way plan right now, and we'll rush you the Fast 5 free. You'll get 1 week of fantastic energizing shakes, 1 week of amazing Craving Crusher shakes, 1 week of delicious meals, all free. And the best news, call in the next 4 minutes and you'll also get the all-new smoothies, absolutely free. Millions of people have lost weight with Nutrisystem, and now you can too. Time is running out. Call now and get all this, plus 1 week of smoothies free. Don't wait.
Call 877-295-SIZE and lose your first 5 pounds free.
We, the people of the United States,
in order to form a more perfect union,
establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility,
provide for the common defense,
promote the general welfare,
and secure the blessings of liberty
to ourselves and our posterity.
Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
We're talking about biblical times. We're talking about early Christian churches, the Christian church of Mesopotamia, of Syria, of ancient Phoenicia, of Alexandria. This is where the apostles spread to first, before they even reached Asia Minor or Europe. But beyond that, we're talking about real people today who have been ethnic cleansed. The number of Christians in Iraq 10 years ago were 1.5 million Christian, now not exceeding 350,000.
As we come back to America's Forum, that was part of a conversation I had the other day with Middle East expert Walid Phares here on this program, addressing the exodus of Iraqi Christians from Mosul and other areas in that nation. And according to a Pew study, Iraqi Christians being forced to flee should not come as a surprise. Pew finding that Christians remain one of the most persecuted religious groups in the world. And now, to talk about this, joining us via Skype from back in Phoenix, which is no small feat considering the fact he was testifying yesterday on Capitol Hill. He's the president and founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. He's also author of the book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim's Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. For purposes of full disclosure, he's my personal physician, and without going into too many privacy areas, Zuhdi, my voice is coming back, but I'm going to rely on my partner, John Bachman, for a couple of these questions. Fair enough?
Anytime. Thanks, JD, for having me.
Happy to step in here. Doctor, real quickly, in a statement, Iraq's prime minister condemned the Islamic State extremist group's actions targeting Christians in the territory that it now controls. We've seen ISIS using the Arabic letter for N to notify Christians, non-believers in those houses. And this is what else is being said. Quote, "What is being done by the Daesh terrorist gang against our Christian citizens in the Navaeh province and their aggression against churches in houses of worship in areas under their control reveals beyond any doubt the extremist channel, criminal and terrorist organizations of this group." What do you make about what's currently playing out and the just overall aggressive nature what we're seeing now, more aggressive than we've seen in the past with these ISIS militants in Iraq?
Well, I have to tell you, we've been trying to shout from the rooftops for the last number of years about the problems Iraqi Christians have been evacuating for many years. And Maliki, I'm sorry if I don't believe a lot of what he says. He's become a client state of Iran, which is probably one of the most offensive states in the world for Christians to live, and has been for many years. And yes, ISIS is a lot more radicalized against Christians than the Maliki government is, but the Maliki government has not overseen a necessarily hospitable place for churches and Christians to exist. The numbers of Christians has decreased orders of magnitude since the dictator and ruthless dictator Saddam Hussein left. So there's a problem there. They've been listed on our commission's list of countries of particular concern for a number of years. And ISIS came out of Syria. Syria is it's a byproduct of the problems in the revolution in Syria, and they are imposing a radicalized version of Sharia law, which they will enact a genocide by doctrine and by Sharia. And this is not unique just to Iraq. I hope people take this as a teaching moment that there is not a coincidence that we see churches burned in Pakistan. We see Boko Haram taking girls in Nigeria, trying to convert them to Christianity. We see the Sudanese case that I testified yesterday in Congress about Miriam Ibrahim, who, thank God, this morning was now taken out of there and now was in Italy visiting with the Pope and is free because of a lot of the work of the international attention. All of these are symptoms of a deeper problem, which is the incompatibility of the Islamic State and Sharia law with freedom and liberty, and the need for Muslims to understand that these symptoms are part of a deeper disease, that the gateway drug to this radicalism is political Islam and the supremacism of Islamism.
Well, Zuhdi, as you mentioned this, and since you were on the Hill testifying about the case of Miriam Ibrahim, what do you think happened there? We got a couple of minutes left. I'd like to focus on this. Was it, in fact, the scrutiny from the United States Congress, in part the hearings yesterday, that led to her subsequent freedom from the Sudan? What do you think happened in this situation?
I really think so. I think that Chairman Smith on the Subcommittee of Foreign Affairs really had a big role in bringing the attention. We were going to have a hearing in June, and it was canceled last minute, and all of a sudden the charges were dropped, and then she was all of a sudden unable to leave, and that's what brought the second stage, where the death charges of a punishment of death for apostasy were dropped, but then she couldn't leave, and we knew she wasn't safe there. So the next step was to have, he said, well, we're going to have another hearing. And then we had our hearing yesterday, and she was finally let go. So there's no doubt congressional action by Chairman Smith, Congressman Meadows, and others really did yeoman's work to bring international attention to this, and our commission statements. And the White House finally woke up, and the State Department actually provided safe haven, and they really did do things finally that brought about her release.
Well, that is a hopeful sign. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, we appreciate you Skyping in from Phoenix as you're prepared to see patients and start a full day's work following that whirlwind trip to Washington yesterday. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, JD. Appreciate you.
From the file, now it can be told, Zuhdi was a naval doctor assigned to the House clinic. And he became my doctor there and then took over his dad's practice in Phoenix, so he became my personal physician. But he has staked out a position that is a very courageous one within the Islamic community, saying, here are American values, and here's the reform that needs to take place in my faith. So,
absolutely, and more folks who are Muslims need to stand up and say exactly what he's saying.
Well, time now for an American moment. In our case right now, we are going to hear from President Reagan in a strategic defense initiative that made history.
I call upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace.
On March 23, 1983, President Reagan surprised not only the nation, but members of his own cabinet and military by announcing an Oval Office address that the United States would embark on creating an anti-missile system to stop and destroy nuclear-tipped missiles in space. Reagan called the program the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI, while his critics quickly dubbed the program Star Wars. Still, the idea gained popular support and played a key role in undermining the Soviet Union and its arms buildup. By 1987, with his own nation facing economic collapse and unable to match the U.S. program, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev capitulated and signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Within 4 years, the Soviet Empire itself would collapse, ending a Cold War that lasted more than 4 decades. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax TV.
When you break down or need help fast, there's AAA and there's Auto Vantage. Let's see who has the advantage. AAA Plus covers you for up to a 100-mile radius. So for a 150-mile tow, it could cost you up to $200 out of pocket. With Auto Vantage, you're covered up to 150 miles at no additional charge. Advantage Auto Vantage. With Auto Vantage Locate Me technology, we'll find you with GPS by leveraging all the largest cellular carriers in America and provide you with professional roadside assistance. With AAA's Find Me service, they can find you with GPS, but only if you're calling with certain carriers. Or you can call, explain the intersection where you broke down, and hope you described your location correctly. Advantage Auto Vantage. Auto Vantage provides lockout assistance of not just your car, but your home as well, which could cost you $50 or more each time. Plus, you'll get access to our certified mechanics hotline for repair advice and to tell you what real service costs should be. So if you're considering renewing or joining AAA, stop and take advantage of our 25 years of quality service in all 50 states. Just call or log on and see our head-to-head comparison against AAA and why it makes sense to switch today, like hundreds of other benefits and discounts we offer at more than 20,000 Auto Vantage certified service centers, hotels, and car rentals. Now get ready for the best part. For a family of 4 drivers, AAA Plus could cost you $139 or more per year. Auto Vantage, $69.99. We cover you and every member of your immediate family at no additional charge, whether they're home or away. That's just the right thing to do. Advantage Auto Vantage. Call or log on now.
Call 1-800-735-4186. That's 1-800-735-4186 or log on to www.tryAutoVantage.com.
Look how beautiful it is.
Honey, we need to talk.
We do. I took the trash out.
I know, and thank you so much for that. I think we should get a Medicare supplement insurance plan.
Right now?
Whether you're new to Medicare or not, you may know it only covers about 80% of your Part B medical expenses. It's up to you to pay the difference. So think about an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan, insured by United Healthcare Insurance Company. Like all standardized Medicare Supplement Insurance plans, they help cover some of what Medicare doesn't pay.
I did a little research. With a Medicare supplement plan, you'll be able to stay with your doctor.
Oh, you know, I love that guy.
These types of plans let you visit any doctor or hospital that accepts Medicare patients, and there are no networks.
Is this a one-size-fits-all kind of thing?
No, there are lots of plan options. It all depends on what we need and how much we want to spend.
Call now to request your free decision guide. It could help you find an AARP Medicare supplement plan that's right for you.
What happens when we travel?
The plans go with us, anywhere in the country.
I like that.
You know what else? United Healthcare Insurance Company has years and years of experience. What do you say?
I'm in.
Join the millions already enrolled in the only Medicare supplement insurance plans endorsed by AARP. Remember, all Medicare supplement plans help cover some of what Medicare doesn't pay and could really save you in out-of-pocket medical costs. You'll be able to choose your own doctor or hospital as long as they accept Medicare patients. And with these plans, there could be low or no copays.
You do your push-ups today?
Prepare to be amazed.
Don't wait. Call today to request your free decision guide and find the AARP Medicare supplement plan to go the distance with you. Go long.
Fewer than 5 minutes remain in this edition of America's Forum. Alongside Francesca Page and John Bodman, J.D. Hayworth, so intent not on stepping on eggshells, yesterday I muffed the sign-off line. That's how tough it was. So the pressure is on. However, before we get there, it's your turn. Your comments via social media on important stories. Let's talk about Israel. And Francesca, I think you have the first comment.
This first one coming from Mim14B. Hamas targeting Ben Gurion Airport comes as no surprise.
And Butch writing in, this speaks volumes of the inaccuracy of the Hamas rocketry. They say they are targeting Ben Gurion Airport, but to date, the closest they can get is nearly a mile away.
Aglander says this: government needs to focus on missile violence and the need to confiscate those missiles after seeing how the Hamas terrorists launched them indiscriminately toward Israel like kids playing with fireworks on the 4th of July.
And this from Mr. Fix-It. Secretary of State John Kerry arrived in Cairo Monday to help broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Israel has already accepted one ceasefire, only to have Hamas ignore it and continue firing. So Israel responded with a ground invasion of Gaza. So why bother?
And Older But Wiser 3 writing in, Israel is not the aggressor. The international community must call for Hamas to surrender all their weapons and destroy all their missiles and launchers. For there to be any hope of ending the current conflict, Hamas must cease and desist for there to be a ceasefire.
And I know there are many who would perhaps disagree with me on this, but dispatching John Kerry to insert himself into the situation now, I get the distinct sense that he's almost an unwanted guest. Now, I know the Israelis will say, oh, we welcome American involvement, but based on what Secretary Kerry had to say in his open mic moment on Fox the other day, where he said, oh, pinpoint operation.
A little awkward.
Very, very sarcastic.
As the saying goes, too many cooks spoil the broth. Same applies in this situation, I would say.
That's right, and some folks would say if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. John Kerry has been in this region so many times trying to prevent what's playing out right now from happening and also trying to foster a longer-term Mideast peace process, some sort of deal. We talked about that. Remember, we talked about Israel's efforts to push back against some of the settlers in the contested areas of Israel still as a olive branch to the process. Nothing worked. Kerry has been ineffective thus far. We've heard Alan Dershowitz credit him on this aspect, so we can be fair here, but still, proof is in the pudding. The fighting continues to this day.
And again, you mentioned Professor Dershowitz, and he remains steadfast in his interpretation that that Secretary Kerry is acting responsibly and that the peace process moves forward. At any rate, we shall see the other variation from the last ceasefire, the fact that now you have al-Sisi as president of Egypt, with the military taking over, deposing the Muslim Brotherhood. So a whole lot still at play here.
And when you think of al-Sisi, you know, and you think of that Who song, Meet the New Boss, same as the old boss, very similar to Mubarak. Here we come full circle. The people of Egypt choosing a military commander as their president because they desire law and order. At least that's what it appears like. And al-Sisi trying to put that in place, trying to foster this peace plan. But Hamas remains the sticky wicket.
It's still the sticky wicket. That's exactly what we would say in England, and I think that the English folk would agree with you on that too, John.
Yeah.
Well, we will continue to watch, and if there are any developments, they will be reported here on Newsmax TV. Speaking of Newsmax TV, we're about to make way for Midpoint with Ed Berliner. That starts at high noon Eastern Time. That will be followed at 3 p.m. by the Steve Malzberg Show, featuring who else? Well, as the title of the program implies, it's our friend Steve Malzberg. And if all goes well, and we continue to take the honey with tea and lemon. Notice how I put more honey in, kind of like Winnie the Pooh. I'm starting to sound like Pooh a little bit. At any rate, despite that, oh bother, this throat, what a problem, oh bother. Be that as it may, we'll address throat issues. Hope to be back with you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. in the East, 6 a.m. in the West, here on America's Forum. For Francesca Page and John Bachman, J.D. Hayworth saying, thanks so much for watching. Stay brave, stay free, and stay tuned. It's the cold medication that's got me honest. We'll see you tomorrow.